we're live. What's up, Joe? Good to see you,
much,
man.
I'm pumped to be here. I'm like a little kid here right now.
Me too, man.
Smiling around and loving it.
Well, I'm excited. There's a big Glory event this Friday in Los Angeles. I'll be there, and it's you got 2 world titles, right? No,
yeah, 2.
Is it 2 world
There's
titles?
2 world titles. You have
Jason
Israel
Wilness and Israel Adesanya.
which that's a wicked fight.
Wicked fight.
Yeah, and then you're looking at Matt Embry, another Canadian kid, against Dutch beast Robin van Roosmalen.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
That's
going
going to be that's on UFC
very
Fight
exciting.
Pass.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so psyched that the UFC and UFC Fight Pass is embracing Glory. It's super exciting for me.
I think so, and it was that huge collision card in Germany. You had Rico versus Bader, and UFC ran that pay-per-view for us.
Oh,
So
really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
That was the first time the UFC has run anything other than UFC.
Wow.
So that's huge, man. Like, that's for us is a big accomplishment for kickboxing.
Well, we've talked about it in this podcast. We were just talking about it a couple minutes ago. I think kickboxing, especially high-level kickboxing like Glory, is one of the most exciting sports in the world, and it perplexes me and many other people why it's not more exciting.
It's crazy.
Because it's not hard to understand what's going on. Like, one of the things about MMA that is very important to me is, like, when the fights go to the ground, I have to explain step by step what's going on, because otherwise people that don't know ground fighting, they all of a sudden, like, why is he tapping? What's going on? Like, you don't see exactly what's going on. But when someone explains it to you, you see it. Well, with kickboxing, it's pretty obvious.
It's pretty obvious. Yeah, you have kicks and punches and knees.
Yeah, just
don't
people
grab.
getting smashed.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it. I seriously don't understand.
Dana White has a really good theory. He thinks that PKA karate from, like, you remember the 1980s when they used to have those PKA karate matches on ESPN?
Okay, yeah.
Remember when they wore the karate pants and the big booties on their feet?
Bouncing around.
And it was really just sloppy boxing with, like, some shitty kicks.
Yeah, but that's what even American kickboxing, that's like they have a kick rule. So what would happen, they would throw 8 kicks in the beginning of the round, and then all of a sudden they'd box for the rest of the round.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And for whatever reason, and above the waist as well.
Yeah.
Which I think one of the things about kickboxing as opposed to the traditional martial arts or like Taekwondo or karate is, like, as soon as you start adding leg kicks, like, it changes the whole game.
It's a totally different game.
It changes everything. And we were talking before this fight about your fight, or before this podcast rather, about your fight with Raymond Daniels, which is one of my favorite fights ever.
Thank you.
Because he is this traditional karate guy. He was a point fighting champion, and he has wicked kicks. He's just one of the most spectacular and dynamic guys in kickboxing. But your leg kicks and your constant pressure and just rock solid Muay Thai fundamentals. You just chopped him down, and then eventually head kicked him.
Yeah, it's those movement fighters are very tricky. And I think what made that fight super exciting was that old school UFC mentality. You had 2 different arts, battling to see which one was better. And Raymond Daniels was undefeated. He was just knocking people out with spinning hook kicks every time he was fighting. So, as a smart, intelligent fighter, you got to put pressure. And I remember we had a conversation about, guys like Wonderboy Thompson. Why isn't his opponents calling someone like me to do it? But you had a good point. It takes a special fighter to really close distance and pressure like that, and to be able to execute a game plan with heavy low kicks like that. So,
yeah, you have to really have a high-level Muay Thai game to deal with a guy like Wonderboy the same way. Because, Wonderboy is also real unusual in his use of the front leg. Like, he is that sideways stance, and he kind of bends a little at the waist and throws all those wicked front leg side kicks and round kicks. And on top of that, he's a really good puncher.
He's good. He's impressive.
Yeah.
It's the rematch is happening, isn't it, with Woodley?
Yeah. It's going to be in March in Vegas. That's going to be crazy.
Yeah, that's a good rematch.
It is a good rematch, especially because Woodley was dominating that first round with his wrestling and really never took him down again. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, I wonder why he didn't take him down. And I asked him after the fight. He goes, I have no idea why I didn't take him down again.
Yeah.
It was just, he was just in the moment.
He's just loving it, man.
Yeah.
Just loving the moment, loving the experience. Yeah, it's exciting.
So you now have taken some time off from fighting because of concussions.
That's right.
And tell me about that.
So, yeah, it was actually, I think you were at my last fight. It was, I fought Mark DeBont, rest in peace. I remember we talked about
what happened to Mark? Did they find out what happened to him?
I don't know. A lot of the stuff is coming out is in Dutch and Dutch newspapers, and I'm asking all of the Dutch community kind of what's happening, and they don't really know. You hear different things and rumors, but I don't want to listen to rumors like that. I don't want to hear it from, like, a concrete source, and
so he went missing, and then they found his body.
Then they basically found his body, Wow. So why or who knows, but
he was a great
scary,
fighter,
bro. He was amazing.
Excellent fighter. You know, and he was another guy, but boy, you know, you look at him, he looked like a computer programmer.
Yeah,
You know?
seriously.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's interesting how looks can be so deceiving. It's a super high level guy.
Yeah, but that was my last fight, and from there it was actually a really tough. I never really opened up about it, to be honest with you, and it was a very tough experience. You know, you got to think, I just win the world title. I'm going home to Canada, which my concussion was pretty bad, where I shouldn't have even gone on a plane home. And next thing you know, I'm at home, and just the concussions got really bad. I had to be, you know, hospitalized for a few days, and I was in a dark room for 3 weeks, man. I could not get out of a dark room for 3 weeks. I couldn't walk. I guess something with the concussion started causing some nervous, you know, nerve damage.
Dinging.
That could be me.
One of us.
Yeah, so it started causing some nerve damage in my back. So I was like in a bed, man. Couldn't even look out at a little red light on my phone charger. It was too much.
Really?
Yeah, it was bad, man.
The red light on the phone charger would hurt your head.
I couldn't even look at a thing. So it was at that point, it was like, man, it's like I just win this world title, and it was a really tough time. And this is actually the first time I've really opened up about it, but it was a tough experience. And being in that, you know, down state where you're basically in a dark room for 3 weeks, doctors were just, you know, handing me over a shit ton of Percocets and Oxys to kind of deal with the pain, and it was a tough time, man. And it really, I think what was the hardest was what was happening mentally. I'm sitting there being like, man, I just want a world title. I want to get back in there. I want to, you know, do so much in this sport, and my goal was to be a legend in this sport. But, you know, and then it got to the point I saw my family and how much it was affecting my family, and that's when I decided that, you know what, let's put this on rest for a little bit.
So you win the fight, and after the fight is over, was it immediately that you knew something was wrong?
Honestly, I had some adrenaline rush, and I did the post-fight press conference. Everything was fine. Just when I got back to the hotel room, man, I was throwing up and couldn't leave my room, and I was surprised that I even got on an airplane home. The doctors in Canada were like, how the heck did you get on an airplane home? Yeah, so it was scary times, man, and it took a lot of good mental strength to get out of it. And now I'm actually in a position where I'm super happy and I'm loving it. I got that whole color commentary role with Glory, which has been incredible.
Well, that's great. It's great that you found a way out of it. But man, I would imagine that when you were in that dark room and you couldn't even look at the light on a charger, that must have been really uncomfortable to deal with.
It was tough, man. And another it's just the way, how can I explain it? It gets emotional sometimes, you know? It was a time where it was like, I finally achieved what I wanted, and no one has really gotten to that level in the time that I did. Before I turned pro, I only had 11 amateur fights. And right away into the pro ranks, I only had 14 professional fights. So you got to think, in 25 fights, I was able to get in there, become a professional, win, you know, the world title in the biggest kickboxing organization. All within 25 fights, amateur, professional combined.
And how old were you when you won the title?
28.
So you're still young. You know,
and I'm 31 right now.
But think about that, you know, like the amount of fights you had, not that many in comparison to a lot of these Dutch guys that have 100+ fights, a lot of the Thai guys that have more.
It's crazy to think, I think it's just bad luck sometimes. And my style was a style that was really, man, you could watch any one of my fights and you're going to be entertained. And I understood the value of, you know, it's more than just a sport. You got to win, you got to dominate, you got to be exciting. And I think that's what I really did in my career, and that's what I got such a huge following behind me. And, you know, it's just, it was sucked because I had more I wanted to show, put it that way.
Now, when you see a guy like Mayweather who's gone through a career and he's like 49-0 and is probably one of the best, if not the best, defensive fighters of all time, and then you see what you went through with your situation, do you look at a guy like Mayweather and say, man, maybe I should take a different approach, or maybe I should have taken a more safety-first approach?
I'm torn between that, because at one point, that's Floyd Mayweather, right? And you're looking at a guy who makes multi-millions a fight, and you know, he has that support around him. And whether it's a boring fight, and most people who watch, the casual fans who watch Floyd Mayweather think he's boring. Right. But really, if you're a skilled fighter and you understand what he's doing, you understand how incredible of an athlete he is. But I was just thrown in there with the Wolves, man. It was kind of like, hey, you're fighting Kareem Gaji in your third Glory fight. It's only his 100th professional fight, and that's my 8th. So what do I do? Do I play the point games with someone who's been in that ring, probably had 100 amateur fights, 100 professional fights? What do I do? So again, I have to go in there. I got to build a name for myself. You got to think, Canada, there's no professional fighting in Ontario, Canada, where I'm from. So there's no professional fighting. I had no experience. So my approach was, I got to bring the heat to these guys.
Wow.
I got to bring the heat. I got to be exciting, and I got to finish.
Just turn it into a brawl.
Just turn it in. But again,
Technical
I wouldn't
brawl.
use brawl. Yes,
Right.
yes. People always say, oh, you're a brawler, you're aggressive. Like, nah, I'm a technician. And actually, when I'm coming forward and I'm stalking you, I'm waiting to counter kick. I'm waiting to use my low kicks. I'm waiting to counter you. So it's very calculated. I wouldn't say brawling.
Yeah, that's probably not the right word, but you turn them into very violent encounters.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Now, when you watch high-level kickboxing like Glory, and then you see what's going on in MMA, where I think the level of striking is certainly advancing. You're getting better and better strikers, but it's really not at the same level that you're seeing in like world champion kickboxing.
Yeah, it's totally different. And people got to understand it's a totally different sport. The way you would fight in kickboxing, you're not going to fight the same way in MMA.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's takedowns, and there's a lot of very successful kickboxers who don't do well in MMA. A lot
Right.
don't, because they keep that traditional Muay Thai stance where they stand very tall and they're fighting very tall, and of course a wrestler's going to take you down.
Right.
And, an example of a good Canadian striker is Shane Campbell. Shane Campbell fights in the UFC, and he's got an incredible background in Muay Thai, but he stays true to sometimes a little too much to his Muay Thai roots on the striking. You got to keep your hips back. You got to move. It's a totally different game. You got a 4-ounce glove, not an 8-ounce glove, so shit changes.
Yeah, it also affects your offense too when you're worried about takedowns. You're worried about all these different aspects
Different
of
fight.
Yeah, the clinch, the cage. You know, have you ever fought in a cage?
No.
We've been debating a lot lately. I talk way too much about it. People getting annoyed because I think that they should do it on like a basketball court. I really think fights should take place on a large surface with no obstacles, nothing other than the fighters themselves.
Did you like the Pride ring over the octagon, or?
No, I think rings are dangerous. Like you saw the Bernard Hopkins, Joe Smith Jr. fight, right? Yeah, I mean, that's a good example of why I think rings are dangerous. It's not often that happens where guys get knocked through the ropes, but it does fucking happen. And in Pride, I think, you know, they did a good job of standing outside the ring. Like the Pride organization was good, where they had a bunch of guys waiting to catch people.
But it's still weird. It shouldn't have to come down to that.
Exactly.
But I get it for MMA, but for like a kickboxing, I can't really see it being done in a cage. I think you had him on, John Wayne Parr.
Yes.
Yeah, he does caged Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, he loves it, you know, and he does it with MMA gloves too.
Yeah. That's dangerous, man. You're putting good strikers on without a takedown. That's dangerous, man.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing, you know? I mean, it's a totally different thing with those little gloves too, right?
Yeah.
Have you done any fighting with little gloves?
No, I was actually planning to fight a few times, because before Glory, there was nothing. You got to look, originally it was K1, and K1 only had a lightweight division and a heavyweight division. So everyone in between had to pick a way.
Right.
I actually fought in LA. It was against a UFC fighter, Mehdi Baghdad.
Okay,
So I fought Mehdi Baghdad in LA, and it was just, I tried making for the first time 160, and it was
You're a big
hell.
guy. What do you walk around at?
Well, my non-fighting walk around about 200. When I was fighting, about 190, 195.
So you were trying to lose 30 plus pounds.
Yeah, it sucked. It sucked. But I think that's the other thing. MMA guys know how to cut weight a little better than kickboxers do. I think there's that wrestling. Growing up with that wrestling helps.
Yeah, but I think it's more dangerous I know it's more dangerous with striking than it is with wrestling. And that's one of the problems with that wrestling mentality.
Your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain's dehydrated.
Yeah, but see, the advantage in MMA of being bigger, it's not the same as the advantage of being bigger in striking, because being bigger in striking is important. It's definitely a factor. But it's so much more of a factor when you're clinching. So much more of a factor when you take guys down.
You lose a little bit of speed sometimes and that mobility. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about sparring with little gloves, what differences did you notice, or you think about fighting with little gloves?
It was more about moving more. And I coach a lot of MMA guys, and I got to work in the UFC. I got to corner twice in the UFC, which was pretty cool. I had Mitch Gagnon. And I got to corner Antonio Carvalho.
Who was Mitch fighting?
When he fought, I have to dig deep here. Young kid. I want to say he was Hawaiian, maybe. Knocked him out. I helped train him for, he fought Walwell Watson. He knocked him out with a left hook. Who was that other kid that he fought? But my last Antonio fight was against Darren Elkins. Which
Sure,
was,
tough guy.
That was one of those fights where Antonio got caught, dropped, popped back up, and Yves Levine called it off. And we're like, it was an early stoppage. But yeah, he's protecting Antonio.
So it's interesting that a guy like you, who is this very high-level world champion kickboxer, learning how to fight and move with the small MMA gloves, it kind of shows you that striking, in particular with MMA striking, is still in a learning, growing phase.
Oh, for sure.
Because guys like you come in, and you are like guys like Duke Rufus, a former world champion himself, who's really good at training guys and teaching guys.
Dwayne Ludwig's doing a good job.
Perfect example, yeah. And there's so many different methods and so many different styles that people are trying to incorporate.
I just think I think people focus fighting. The way I look at fighting, it's not actually what you throw. And I always get questioned, what's a good coach versus a bad coach? And a good coach is going to teach you positioning, distance. Is going to tell you more of the philosophies and strategies around fighting. Where there's so many coaches, and with MMA being so popular, there's every other corner has an MMA gym. And these guys are basically putting these fighters on pads, and they're just getting them tired. Jab, cross, hook kick, jab, cross, hook kick, more combination. They get tired, and they think tired equals good. Right. Where there's so much more to fighting. Where's your distance control? How are you moving? What are your counters? How are you countering? What are your defense? People think there's defense, but there's different types of defense. You got head movement, you got shield defense, you got footwork for your defense. You got parries. So there's so many different ways, but it does take good coaching, in my opinion, to take these guys to that high professional level, and there's not enough of it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so hard for a young fighter to find really solid coaching. I mean, when you start out, you're really kind of lucky if you walk into a great gym your first time, because so few people, especially in the beginning, really know how to differentiate between a great gym and just a regular gym. It's very, very difficult to tell.
Yeah, it's hard. But back to your original question, it's about mobility, in my opinion. Guys in MMA need to know how to move a little bit better. I think footwork is one of the most important things in fighting. And you got to be able to adapt. If you're fighting a pressure fighter, you got to be able to move and fight on angles. If you're fighting a guy who now likes to move a lot, you got to be able to pressure fight. So you have to have the coaching and the knowledge to be able to adapt accordingly.
Yeah, and another thing I think that a lot of people don't see when you're watching kickboxing or you're watching Muay Thai, you're seeing these guys are standing close to each other and they're throwing kicks, and it's hard to tell exactly why they're doing what. It's hard to tell exactly why one guy is more effective, but once you see it, and once you practice it and once you do it, then it all starts opening up to you like a flower. Now, when a guy like you is doing commentary, it really helps. Because a guy who's been in there, a guy who's been a world champion, and you get to explain what this guy's probably thinking, what's going wrong, and it's sort of, I really like your commentary, man.
I've been trying, man. I'm still learning. Thank you.
You do a great job.
It means a lot coming from you.
But you're explaining things in a way that's opening up the game to people. It opens up the sport where you go, oh, okay, now I know what to look for. Now I know what trends are happening.
See, I'm trying to find the balance still. I think that's one of my challenges. If I come in there and I start talking, his left heel is about 2 inches, which is, causing this to happen, and his distance control is off, he needs to slip off. Like, it's too much sometimes. So my challenge has been trying to kind of bring it down a little bit and try not to over-educate. Yeah. That's been my challenge. The other challenge is try not to use the same word all the time. What a good left hook. What a big left hook. I'm trying to change words, man. I need a thesaurus beside me and just try to write shit down or something, man.
Well, I can tell you I've failed on all those exact same things.
It's hard, man.
Talk too much, say the same words too many times, call people too explosive. And then, like, some people got mad if I call them explosive or athletic. Like, how come you only talk about black guys? You call them explosive and athletic. I'm like, okay, there's white guys that are explosive and athletic too, but you can't tell me that certain guys aren't fucking explosive.
But how you deal with it? Are you okay with it now? It's been hard for me, man. People come out and they take all your words seriously. Yeah. You go online and people are like, you freaking don't know shit, and they're talking crap, and I was like,
well, they can't say that.
Well,
anybody who says that you don't know shit's an idiot.
Yeah.
And you're going to get that, but I think they keep you on your toes, man.
Yeah,
I really do. I mean, I think for the most part, the majority of respectful fans, and even, they might see something that maybe you don't know that you're doing that might be annoying. And if it's annoying to them, it's annoying. It might it might be only annoying to 2% of the people, but there might be a way where you could eliminate that aspect of your commentary. And I know I've worked hard on that.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think all the online criticism, as much as it's uncomfortable, like it fucks a lot of fighters' heads up, man.
Oh, it kills people.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of guys, coaches, that were like, man, those trolls, man, they fucked with his head. I'm like, really? And like, yeah, he's always reading the comments and going on forums.
That could be dangerous, man.
Yes.
That could be freaking dangerous, yeah.
I mean, because you don't know who's making those things. I mean, that could be a 12-year-old kid who's on Adderall, who's kicking his cat, and you're reading this guy's words like as if it's gospel, and you want to argue with him, and guys get online, you don't know shit, and like, fuck your mother. Like, what? My mother, you piece of shit. And then
it's tough, man.
Think about it all day.
Yeah. It's harder than it. I thought commentary was going to be an easier job than I thought, but I think it's harder than fighting right now because it's still new to me. I've only done 10 Glory shows, and I don't think it's official yet, but maybe I'll make it official here. But Glory signed me full time next year.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Glory's had huge shows. I'm gonna do 18 shows next year.
Whoa!
And I don't know if how much you know about my life, but I'm also a full time high school teacher.
You are?
Yeah, man.
No kidding.
So literally in my
teach?
morning, I teach phys ed. I teach at a special education school, so I work with kids with special needs, behaviors, autism. So I teach phys ed to them. So that's 8. What time do we start? 8:55 to 3:30. Then from 3, I have an hour to eat my lunch or my dinner at that point, and then I have my own gym, Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA.
And so you teach classes after that?
I train and I teach classes a couple of times a week, but we have a big program, man. Our gym's huge, it's big, it's popular, so it's nonstop. And then at night I go home and I have to do commentary.
What a bunch of lucky kids to have a guy like you as a coach. That's amazing.
But I never really got to reach my full potential in all the things I wanted to do with kickboxing. But this is where it's happening. Glory having me full time allowed me to take a year leave from teaching. And again, if you look at my Instagram, you could already see the difference, man. I want to educate people. I want to get people hooked to Glory, hooked to this sport. So I'm posting training videos, training tips. I got Chris Camozzi just commented on one of my videos being like, hey man, keep up the drilling, I love the drills. I had John McDessie just private message me saying like, hey man, good stuff, I've been following you. So it's just getting that word out, man, that kickboxing is the shit and Glory's where it's at.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of like staying the course and continuing to put out content, and we've played a bunch of your stuff on here.
That's been huge. You just posted something, I just got like almost 1,000 new Instagram likes and follows, so thank you, man.
Oh, you're welcome, brother.
Yeah.
So now that you are in this position as Glory commentator and you've recovered from your concussion, do you have any thoughts in your head of fighting again?
To be honest, there's more money doing commentary than there is in the ring. And that's where kickboxing is still at. There's still not enough finances to make it worth. But it also comes down to, is any money worth health at that point?
Right.
You can make $10 million a fight, but if you don't remember that fight after and you don't recover from brain injuries again, what do you do?
I was having this conversation with some guys this week that are not fighters, and they were asking me about certain fights where people got knocked out, and how come when they came back they weren't as good, and my take on it was, you never know how someone's going to recover from a loss. You don't know physically, and your case is a perfect example. We're talking about a fight you won, where you won the world title, where you didn't get knocked out. And
I got knocked down, but not knocked out.
Yeah, and you still had this concussion issue. And when someone would look at you, like right now, you talk great, you look fine, doesn't look like there's anything wrong with you, people would be like, oh, he's fine, why can't he fight?
But you know what, man? It takes, and I'm going to be honest with this whole recovery period, and it takes a lot out of you. You really have to find something deep within inside of you. You have to find that mental strength to be, you know what? Because a lot of what people don't understand, with concussions comes depression. And there's depression is a big side effect. Depression is a big side effect of concussion. So a lot of these guys that you don't see it, they just get knocked out and then they're forgotten about. Those guys go home, they're depressed, their brain chemistry is all mixed up, their brain's not recovering the same way. So it's actually hard. And these fighters are at home probably crying themselves to sleep. They have headaches every day, but they just don't. there's not enough education on what these guys are going through and suffering with. And I know you're really big on it, but one of the big things that has helped me, and we can branch off on this, is the use of CBDs for brain injuries. That's been incredible for my recovery.
Yeah, CBD is a non-psychoactive compound that's in cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a crazy thing that's going on here in the States. I don't know how you guys treat it up in Canada, but it's essentially being turned into a Schedule I drug now, even though it's not psychoactive.
Stupid.
Well, it's 100% shenanigans by pharmaceutical companies. It's 100% influenced by these people that stand to lose money because CBD oil helps a lot of people with inflammation, a lot of people with chronic arthritis.
They're saying cancer.
Yeah.
There's a potential to cure cancer. I don't know. There's not enough studies, but hey.
Yeah,
it's doing good things.
It certainly helps treat it. It treats inflammation, and inflammation, apparently, if you talk to doctors, they'll tell you it's a huge issue, and one of the biggest issues when it comes to diseases, discomfort, and things like arthritis again, and headaches. You know, like when you're taking a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory for a headache, like if you're taking an Advil or an ibuprofen, what you're taking is something that reduces inflammation. I mean, that's what it's for, and CBD oil does the same thing, but it's natural, it's healthy, it's not bad for you, and it doesn't get you high. It's not like something's going to fuck you up at work.
It's been crazy because when I was going in that dark room there for 3 weeks, doctors were giving me like 6 to 8 Percocets a day, and they were giving me 2 muscle relaxants for my back pain. So what
was going on with your back?
I don't know, something with the nerves from my brain, because it must have damaged some of the inflammation, and it was causing like this back pain that I couldn't even get out of bed with. So they were giving me all of these things to cope with it and then all of a sudden I got my sisters and my family to do some research. At that point, man, I would have taken anything. You could have given me coke, heroin, acid, you name it, I would have taken it to recover.
Wow.
Because those pills, they were messing me up. I was going through, like, I was living in a cartoon world in that dark room. I had no idea what was going on. I was tripping out. And then it got to the point where I was like, listen, I got people to research, and they said, hey, these CBDs help. My family did all the research, and they ended up getting me some CBD stuff. And
so in what form did you take it?
I got it as an oil.
And so did you just take it on drops on your tongue or
something? Yeah, I
put
it underneath my tongue, basically, kind of thing. And I was able to cut out all of those Percocets and everything just with CBD oil.
In how long of a time?
Right away.
Right away.
Right away. I stopped because, again, with those concussions and brain injuries, a lot of times you develop insomnia. So I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating much. What is CBDs and cannabis good for? Munchies. And sleeping. And it was good for my recovery. So it helped manage to get off all of those painkillers. And now I'm able to, be healthy and control my brain headaches and stuff without having to take ibuprofen and Advils.
Are you still getting headaches?
They come. Yeah, they're still there. And you got to remember, I'm working 3 full-time jobs. And if you're not, even if your brain is healthy and you're working 3 full-time jobs, you're probably going to get a headache or 2 throughout your day.
Yeah. But when you get a headache, it's a different experience.
It's a different one.
Because you're also, you're so aware of where it can go.
Yeah. It's scary. So it's been helping, man. And I know you have, it's on my list to watch, but because I was explaining, everyone's like, yo, you got to tell Rogan about your experience with CBD. And I haven't got to watch it. I think you wrote, it was in 2007 you came out with The Union?
Yeah, that was a documentary by my buddy Adam, who had, he lives up in BC. And that whole area is essentially run by the marijuana industry, even though marijuana is illegal. So they made this documentary explaining how without marijuana, your entire economy is fucked. Mm-hmm. Like it's this underground economy, and they call it The Union. It was a really, really good documentary.
On my list.
And then he went on to make The Culture High, which is also an excellent documentary that he made after that.
I'll watch both.
Well, it's we've been hoodwinked in this country, unfortunately, in all countries now because of the influence of America. We've been hoodwinked by the propaganda that they came up with in the 1930s, which wasn't even about pharmaceutical drugs back then. It was really about the paper industry.
Huh.
Yeah, it's William Randolph Hearst, who was a real creepy guy, and he was the reason why Orson Welles made that movie Citizen Kane. He was the inspiration for that movie.
Okay.
About one guy who was kind of dominating the world with his influence. And William Randolph Hearst didn't just own newspaper companies; he also owned paper mills, and he owned forests. These enormous forests where they would chop down trees and make paper with them. And in the 1930s, they came out with a product called a decorticator. And a decorticator is a machine that allowed them to effectively process hemp fiber very easily.
Okay.
Because hemp is a very unusual plant. And that, like this table that we have here, this is oak. And oak is a very hard wood. Well, hemp is as hard as oak, but it's way lighter. It's like a freaky alien plant. Like if you pick up a hemp stalk, like this is a decorticator that they're. This is a like a modern one, I guess. So you throw the hemp fibers in there, and it grinds them up. Which, by the way, hemp is still federally illegal, even though it's not psychoactive. And there's so much stupidity that's all attached to this one amazing plant.
I always thought it was just because it was under so much has to be under 1% THC, or is that a myth? It's not.
I don't think
to make
that's
it legal to sell or something along those lines.
I don't know. You can grow it in some states, but the thing is, like federally it's still illegal. But they're trying to change that. It's just slow and painful. And again, it's all the propaganda from the 1930s. So William Randolph Hearst, who owned newspapers, they came out with this decorticator, and then Popular Science magazine had this cover. See if you can find it, Jamie. Hemp, the new billion-dollar crop. Because of this, see, they used to use hemp way back in the day. Like the drafts of the Declaration of Independence were written on hemp. The sails that they used for boats were all made out of hemp. Yeah. All that stuff was out of hemp. In fact, canvas, the word canvas comes from the word cannabis. So the Mona Lisa is painted on hemp. So they came up with that, and then when Eli Whitney came up with a cotton gin, cotton was more effective to use. Yeah, so they were going to use it for clothes, and you see it on the cover of Popular Science magazine. It was on the cover, though, Jamie. See if you... Is it Popular Mechanics? Is that what it is? Anyway. So they used to use it for parachutes. They use it for all these different things. But then when Eli Whitney came up with the cotton gin, it was easier for them to make clothes out of cotton, because hemp requires a lot to break down the fibers and turn them into cloth. Yeah, because it's a crazy plant. Yeah, and it makes this unbelievable paper. Like hemp paper is so superior to this paper that we all use. Like this paper that we use is shit. It rips so easy. Hemp paper is really hard to rip.
Thicker.
But it weighs the same. It looks the same. It feels the same. But it's just a better fiber. So instead of William Randolph Hearst embracing this, he would have lost millions of dollars because he would have had to replant these forests and turn them into hemp. He decided to go the other route and just start making propaganda against hemp. So he started calling it marijuana. See, marijuana was never a name for cannabis. Marijuana was a wild Mexican tobacco. They took this name from this wild Mexican tobacco.
And just called it.
They started talking about this new drug that's making white women get raped by Mexicans and black people.
Nice.
Plant wizards fight wartime drug peril. Look at that. We need hemp, lots of it for Corkage, but hemp means marijuana too. Can scientists take the drug menace out of this useful plant? Hilarious. So all this shit came from this one asshole. One asshole and Harry Anslinger, who was the guy in charge of, they originally got a lot of people that were involved in the alcohol prohibition. And once alcohol prohibition was done, they needed something else to fight. So they said, well, look, we got something right here.
Which alcohol probably does more damage to your body than...
Oh, it does. Trust me. I was drunk as fuck Monday night. I think Monday night I might have been blackout drunk.
People tell me shit for like 3 days probably.
Oh, yeah. I feel like shit today a little bit. But so... This propaganda, they're still fighting this. They're literally still fighting this.
Well, that's kind of like, it's a little different, but why kickboxing, MMA was so hard to get into Ontario. Stupid, legislature and stuff from years ago that the language ruined. So it just ruins things.
What was the language?
It's something about the belts. Like, we can't get kickboxing or Muay Thai in Ontario, Canada.
Because of belts?
No, it's because of some language inside, like legal documents, and it's within that language. It said something about you cannot perform kicks, or that's why like the UFC had so much difficult time to get into Toronto.
But it's in there now. So
it is, but I think it's not yet.
Kickboxing's not in Toronto?
Above the waist only. You can't do low kicking fights.
What?
Or professional Muay Thai in Ontario, Canada.
That's insane.
All old shit from years ago that the commissioner was following from a long time ago. And even if you ask fighters, like I had a conversation with Matt Embry, who's fighting Robin Van Roosmalen, and we were like, I don't even know why. We don't even know. It's just it's in that legal document, the way it's written, and the terminology screwed us up.
But how's that the case when you can still have UFC fights and they're allowed to low kick in UFC fights?
I think it comes to money. Probably comes down to money, like everything else. Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. It's
That is
ridiculous. But
crazy.
you got to think, too, we're off topic, but look at the Canadian kickboxing champions that have come out of Canada. You had Simon Marcus. You had, which, again, I know one of your favorite fights was Joe Schilling.
Yeah,
That
my
was crazy.
God, what a fight.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then went to the 4th round. Joe knocked him out.
Yeah, the
God,
mouth
what a crazy
guard.
fight.
Yeah, that
what
was
a
crazy.
crazy fight.
Yeah, you had Gabriel Varga. You had
Mhm.
myself, now Matt Embry, Robert Thomas from Canada. And we're producing all of these crazy athletes, and we don't even have a professional system. And it's crazy because there hasn't been one U.S. Glory champion.
Well, at one point in time, before MMA or before the UFC really got a foothold in Brazil, the Canada market was the biggest market for MMA.
It's huge.
Outside of the United States. I mean,
The one show we had at the Rogers Center there, huge.
70,000 people. It was
Huge.
gigantic. Or
Yeah, I was
60,000, whatever the fuck it was.
It was nuts.
It was insane. Yeah. And that was also, a lot of it was because of George St. Pierre.
Yeah.
And George being such a great representative of Canada, great representative of the UFC, and a great champion. Like, people flock to him. It's one of the things about Canada is how loyal Canadian citizens are towards their fighters.
Oh, even if you watch Toronto Blue Jays, the Toronto Maple Leafs, man, we're passionate fans. That's why kickboxing has to come there. If we're gonna build it, there's talks about it.
So can Glory make something happen here?
There's talk
Is this
about
the
it.
rules here?
Yeah.
The fouls, administering a kick to the leg, spinning back fists are illegal. Striking the face with any
ridiculous.
part of the arm, elbows are illegal. Chopping to the back of the neck. Oh, they watch too much Flintstones. Fucking karate chop. Striking a blow to the groin area. Okay. Butting with the head. What's the top one, Jamie? Number 1, striking a blow with an elbow or a knee. You can't strike a knee to the body.
See, I still don't get how it works.
That's hilarious.
But how did the UFC? I think it's got to be. I think you need a big chunk of money to kind of even get the commission to look at you.
So look at this. Professional boxing where blows may be struck with both the fists and the feet. That is weird.
Yeah.
So this is the same laws that apply to boxing they use for kickboxing, but you can only kick with the feet. Now, what if you kick someone with a head kick and you hit with the shin? Is it illegal? They don't even know that you're shin kicking.
No one even
They think
knows.
you're kicking with feet. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Sweeping above the ankle. You can't even have you can't even sweep someone.
It's ridiculous.
Above the ankle. So you can't sweep right. You can sweep shitty.
Yeah,
If you
that's right. Yeah, you can fight shitty, but it's okay. Yeah, it's crazy.
Intentionally using
I
the
don't
knee as a
understand.
block. You can't block with the knee.
Well,
you
you
can't
even
check.
kick below the waist, so I guess there's no need to block a
But what if you
kick.
wanted a body kick? You
True.
can't block with a body kick?
I don't
Oh
know.
my God. Intentionally evading contact. Boy, they got a lot of fucking wacky rules. Striking a blow with an open glove.
Well, they changed. The commissioner who was kind of really strict to this is now out. So
Look at
let's
this
see
one.
what changes.
Using abusive language. No Nick Diaz fights in Canada, folks. Disobeying the referee, going down intentionally using the knee as a block. Wow. Extending the legs for the purpose of preventing an opponent from kicking. What?
Yeah.
What in
Don't
the
even ask.
What
Don't
in the
even ask.
fuck is that?
Yeah, it's messed up.
How weird is that?
Yeah.
Extending the leg for the purpose of preventing an opponent from kicking.
I'm guessing this was written in 1990.
But that doesn't even make any sense. Like, you can't even use a teep then. Like, if you wanted to extend your leg, like a teep is to extend the leg. I mean, you're front kicking a guy, you're pushing him off. You could say that would...
Like, I've been to one of the guys I train is Troy Sheridan. He fought an above the weight kickboxing fight professionally. He actually fought another old UFC fighter, Jesse Ronson. You think he's fought twice on the UFC and before he got released? Jesse Ronson.
Who was... Oh, Jean-Yves Theriault.
Yeah, he was
like,
one of the best known Canadian kickboxers.
Yeah, he was a bad motherfucker, man.
Above the waist, yeah.
Above the waist kickboxer. He was the man back in the day. And he was one of the few guys that was like really exciting and would knock guys dead.
I didn't get to watch a lot of it, but I've done my research and watched a few of his fights after, and that's crazy.
I forgot about him for a long time until just this conversation.
Well, you got to think Rufus, Duke Rufus's brother.
Sure, yeah, Rick Rufus, yeah.
Rick Rufus was one of the most popular, I would say.
Oh, for sure. Well, he was so flashy, too. He could do so many wild techniques inside the octagon.
Did you ever see the fight where he fought a Thai fighter?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, with those low kicks, man. That was an exciting fight, too.
Lawrence
but that was
Kenshin
the first
did
time.
a breakdown of that.
Yeah, his stuff's good. He posted one with mine and Mark DeBont. Yeah, he put a nice little... The way I set up that high kick, he's good.
Yeah, he's very good. And it's interesting because that fight essentially changed a lot of people's ideas about low kicks, because even Duke Rufus, like they interviewed Rufus after the fight, I think he was like 19, and he's like, well, it doesn't take any talent to just kick the legs.
Yeah. I remember that was crazy.
Everybody had this weird idea.
You got to ask him about that.
Oh, I've talked to him about it many times now. Well, now he's a huge low kick proponent. He became a world Muay Thai champion. You know?
He loves his low kicks. I guess seeing his brother at such a young age.
Yeah.
But that opened up everyone's eyes to low kicks.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
But the low kick, see, people think like my style or the low kick style is like this new thing. It's actually a really old concept that was kind of forgotten about. And then there's only a few people that came and stuck true to that low kick style. I think it's underrated, especially in MMA. And I think I'm going to bring it up about MMA. Everyone's like, yeah, but the takedowns. A good low kick is based off timing. If I'm going to sit there and I'm going to lead with a low kick against a wrestler, absolutely. He's going to take me down every time. But I think it's the timing of the low kick that people need to understand. If someone's exiting backwards, that's your time for the low kick. So if you put, especially in MMA where people can't really stand in the pocket, they move and they exit. As soon as they get outside of punch range, that's perfect low kick timing. You'll get so many free low kicks on MMA guys, and their legs aren't strong. MMA guys aren't used to that body damage that kickboxers are. And I remember my coach coached Gary Goodridge. And Gary once told me, he's like, when he fought both kickboxing and MMA, he came back and said, he's like, I knew I can go to the after party when I fought MMA. But he goes, and after a kickboxing fight, he's like, I'm not getting out of my bed. Because you got to think how much shin-to-shin kickboxers go through compared to an MMA fight.
Yeah.
How often do you see a leg kick checked in the UFC? Or
it's
getting better.
It's getting better.
It's getting better.
But I agree with you, and that's another thing that people always complain about me, that I'm always calling for low kicks and saying I'd like to see more low kicks. I'd like to see him kick his legs more. But I think you're right, too, that it takes someone who understands Muay Thai at a very high level to be able to pull that off and do it in combination. What you're seeing sometimes in MMA is, you would see it a lot during the George St. Pierre era, where guys were afraid to kick because George was so good at timing.
It's explosive.
But again, who was he fighting against?
Right.
He wasn't fighting against a guy
who
with
actually
the credentials
knew how
like
to use
you.
it properly.
Yeah, and we don't really see that many people. You have a few in the women's division.
Would you say Jose Aldo?
Jose has spectacular leg kicks, no doubt about it.
And he was killing guys with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at the
Uriah Faber
fight was horrendous. I called that fight, and afterwards, Uriah posted all these Instagram pictures and social media.
Of that purple leg.
It was insane.
Yeah,
he had one leg twice the size.
Yeah. I have a meme on my phone I keep sending, because a lot of times in sparring and stuff, I'll smash my guy's legs, and then I'll send them the picture being like, tag someone who doesn't know how to block a low kick, and I just keep sending that picture out, mess around with everyone. But yeah, it was brutal.
Now, what happens to your leg? Oh, there's Uriah's leg. Ugh. Yeah, he had to go in a hyperbaric chamber to try to lessen the injury. Try to heal the injury quicker.
But people don't understand the damage they do. It's like, hey, if every time you punch, I smash your leg, you're not going to want to punch me.
Yeah.
And that's the timing I use. So as soon as someone jabs, you take the leg. Because when someone punches, they have to put their weight on their front leg. And once you put your weight on the front leg, you can no longer block at that point. So if you watch any of my fights or guys with good low kicks, they usually time the low kick off the hands or the step. Because every time you step, you got to be heavy on your front foot. And that's the opportunity to hit that low kick. So you want to look for what I call free low kicks, ones where they can't block. So as they're exiting up, or as they step in, or you try to find those free ones when they're planted on their legs and they can't lift up their leg to block.
Jamie, see if you can find Joe's fight with Raymond Daniels. Because, like I said before, it was one of my, and I'm a big Raymond Daniels fan, by the way. It's not a knock on him at all. I think he's awesome, and I think his style is very important, because it's very important to know that there is a guy who can do the kind of stuff that he can do.
It's incredible.
He does that jump side kick, spinning back kick.
That was against Francois Ambang.
Woo!
Yeah.
I mean, he does a lot of wild shit inside the octagon. And so this fight, to me, was a really important fight for just martial arts strategy and technique to see how a guy like you, who's super high level guy, deals with a guy who's completely unorthodox in terms of traditional kickboxing techniques. he's got a style that is impossible to emulate inside the gym.
And again, I fought Kareem Gaji over 100 fights, Nicky Holtzkin over 100 fights. I fought guys, Mark DeBon over 100 fights. He was probably the fighter I was most scared to fight.
Because of all this wild shit?
I'm like, man, the last thing I want to be is part of a knockout reel of Raymond Daniels spinning hook kick knocking me the frig out. So, I mean, I was scared, man. So at this point, like, even in round 1, it was just like, what the heck is this guy going to do? I had no idea what the heck this guy was going to do.
One of the things I really love about watching you fight, too, is you always have a very high guard. Very high guard, very good fundamentals. And even when you're doing those training sequences that you put on Instagram, everything you do, your guard is high. You're doing everything by the book.
Solid basics, the key.
Who was your original trainer?
My original trainer is Paul Minhas, and that was the one who trained Gary Goodridge through K1 and Pride. But yeah, Paul Minhas, he's the one who really developed my low kick style, and I just, was able to really put it together and showcase his strategy of low kicks. The way he used to explain it is that people think a low kick is a low kick, but it's not. You got to think, where on the shin are you landing the low kick, right? If you land more of the lower part of your shin, that's more of a setup. You might want to use your low kick to set up your hands. You might want to have it as a feeler, just as a distraction. If you start landing higher up on the shin, those are more finished low kicks. The angle you throw it at, the timing you throw it at. So when Paul was training me, he would kind of classify like 9 different low kicks based on where on the leg it's hitting and where on your shin you're landing. So there's so much more. It's like a jab. There's not just there's up jabs. There's jab with your head off on angles. There's low jabs, high jabs. Each jab has a different purpose, and same thing with the low kick.
Hey, you just lit him up with that leg kick, and you saw that little limp that guys start doing when see right there. Like once you start landing these big shots to the legs, you slow him down considerably. Now, what did you do to prepare for his movement and this front leg style? Because he was throwing a lot of front leg side kicks to your front leg.
It was just this fight. What a lot of people don't see when you fight, a lot of it is ring control. You can't just chase Raymond Daniels. You have to get him against the ropes. You got to corner him. And if you see when he blitzes, I don't move back. If you move back, you give him an exit and an opportunity to escape. Where if you stay, see when he blitzes, I stay right in his pocket and it opens up the low kick.
And you're forcing him to move backwards as well, which is very tiring.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people get way more tired moving back than they do moving forward. It seems like you're both fighting at the same pace, but who's doing more work?
Well, this round was more of a feel-out round, and you got to remember, after this fight, I fought Nicky Holtzkin.
Yeah,
so
same night.
It's 20 minutes later.
Fucking crazy.
20 minutes later.
I'm not a fan of that. I really am not.
I personally don't. You got to think, your brain is still shook up from that first fight, if not fully recovered. And in my opinion, the best fighter doesn't necessarily come out on top.
In tournaments,
too many variables.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. It's fun to watch. It's exciting when you're watching it because it builds up to one eventual champion, and you get to watch all these fights take place during the night. But I think especially you're getting hurt, and then you're recovering a little bit, and then going back in again, and you're still busted up from the first fight.
I probably lost a good 10 years of my life after that night, but what are you going to do? Yeah, but there used to be 8-man tournaments.
Yeah.
8-man tournaments. Yeah, that's 3 fights in one night.
Did you fight Nicky Holtzkin twice?
Just once.
Just once.
Just once. And one night, you got to think, I got one of the knockouts of the year in this fight, and I got the fight of the year. Nicky and I won fight of the year that year, where we just sat and exchanged combinations for 3 rounds.
No, it was an awesome fight. Now there you see, like, he's starting to limp. Now, did you bring anybody in that kicks like this, that throws those front leg side kicks and the hopping kicks?
You know what? It was very tough. I experimented with a Taekwondo guy, and it just wasn't the same. And the problem is, a lot of these karate guys, they can't handle that constant pressure. They're used to guys standing, keeping distance with them, letting them kick, but I was too much of a bully for those guys.
Right.
I was able to just stay in the pocket. They try to throw spinning kicks. I would just push them on the ground. I was like, they couldn't handle like the constant strong pressure style.
It's definitely interesting to watch how it's so much more. Yeah, there it is over and over again. And you're seeing him limping now, and you're noticing him as you're fighting. You're noticing that, and you keep hitting that same spot. Now he's moving. He's standing southpaw now.
You can tell he can. Yeah. You can tell he's done.
He mixes it up a little bit. I mean, he does switch his stances, but you could see he's really trying to protect that left leg now. He's keeping it back. Now, when you did bring in those guys, was there anything that they could show you about how to avoid those kicks or how to move away from them?
It was more of just kind of like, hey, this is kind of the distance and the setup. These are the kind of few things you need to look at. But I was really in my fight career, which I kind of have a different philosophy now, now that I'm a coach a lot more and I'm looking at fighting a little bit differently. But here I knew I was going to fight my fight. He had to fight my way. If not, he was going to be in trouble.
Those 3 in a row. Boom, boom, boom. Just chopping at that leg. To me, this is like the fight that I show people. When I show people the difference between a really good Muay Thai fighter who's fighting a guy who throws a lot of flashy stuff but doesn't really know the low kick game.
Yeah, and he throws those things, but there's not a lot of threat outside those spinning attacks. He does have that explosive left hand, but good defense, you can shut that down really good.
Well, he was a great karate point fighter, but his boxing has come a long way since this fight. I think, he learned a lot about a lot of things in this fight, but his hands weren't the big threat.
No.
That's one of the things that differentiates him from Wonder Boy. Also, Wonder Boy's obviously fighting with smaller gloves, but Wonder Boy has nasty hands.
So if Wonder Boy and Raymond Daniels were to fight in kickboxing, who wins?
That's an interesting question. Wonder Boy's undefeated in kickboxing. But
see, those are the other things
anymore.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, you hear about this guy. It's like, oh yeah, he's undefeated as a kickboxer. It's like, hey, we're the same weight.
Right.
If you're undefeated and so how come we never heard of each other or
Right.
saw each other? Like, what happens like with a lot of these guys and with kickboxing, there's so many different organizations. So
Yep.
you'll see guys that'll come around and say like, hey, I'm a 10-time world champion. I'm like, okay, like where?
Yep.
Like I think there should be there's one world champion that matters right now, and it's Glory.
Right.
So any other belt than that, to me, I don't think you're a world champion.
Well, what about lion fight? What about Muay Thai? Obviously
it's a
little
different
bit
class.
different.
It's a different class.
Yeah.
I would say Muay Thai and kickboxing are very different.
What do you like better?
I'm a straight kickboxer.
And why do you like kickboxing better than Muay Thai?
Because I like to rely on pace, more aggression, and more. I'm a combination style fighter, so I like to always mix up kicks and punches, punches and kicks. I fought 2 full rules Muay Thai fights. One of them was a French fighter who it was again my 6th professional fight. It was his like 70th, and he came in. He was I beat him up on the outside. But as soon as he came close, he clinched up with me, elbows, 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 and he split my head open. 6 weeks later, I fought, and it's actually on YouTube, I fought Mehdi Baghdad. That would be a cool one for you to watch. And I put a little clip on if we want to find it after this one. It's literally like, I made it into like a 2-minute clip, and it's just beating the crap out of him, and he landed 2 elbows, and I got like 30 stitches at the end of that fight, covered in blood. I got like a 3-inch gash in my head. I had 5 stitches off my eyes. He landed 2 elbows, 2 strikes basically the whole fight, and those 2 strikes were the damaging ones.
Wow.
Which, okay, it's cool. I knew I wanted to be a kickboxer, so I never focused on my elbows. Could I be a Muay Thai champion? Absolutely. But my focus was on kickboxing, and at that point to get into the K1 Max.
Right.
I wanted to fight the Zambitis. I wanted to fight all of the, the Buakaus. I wanted to fight those guys. So my focus was always on kickboxing from the day I started.
Well, that was the big organization. K1 was the big organization that kind of opened up kickboxing to the world. And Japan did an amazing job of that. And then they had, of course, It's Showtime, and It's Showtime ran for a while, and they became Glory, right?
Yeah, there's part of it, and they shut down because the problem is there was a lot of problems happening in Holland. There was a lot of like illegal stuff happening.
Illegal?
Is this the finish right
here?
Yeah,
this is you're battering him now. Just the amount of shots. Yeah, that's it. Head kick. It's over. The amount of shots that he took to the legs. Now, when you were saying that MMA fighters they don't have the toughness of the legs, they're not used to taking the punishment in the legs. What is the difference? Like, how does your legs get tougher from getting kicked?
Well, it's like if you look at martial arts in your body is your armor. So you gotta look at your body as armor. If you don't strengthen that armor, you're only as strong as your armor can hold, right? So if you're not training your body to get hit, you can't really take as much damage. So if you're constantly taking low kicks every day in training, you build up that endurance and that tolerance and that strength to be able to take hard low kicks. But a lot of guys, if you're not used to that, taking hard arm kicks. When my first professional fight, I left with like welts on my forearm. My knees would be swollen. I couldn't even get my shoe on after the fight because everything was just so swollen. And you just take so much damage on the body that eventually it hardens and it gets stronger. And like, I mean, you got to look at our shins and our kickboxers and Muay Thai shins. We're going through bats, whatever you want. We're just constantly kicking things, where in MMA, there's not as much focus on conditioning and hardening the body because you don't need it as much.
But what does condition the legs to take that kind of punishment?
Just constant hitting.
So, but
in years of training or getting
sparring.
someone to constantly lightly touch your legs, build up the tolerance. You got to build a strong armor to be able to withstand whatever damage.
What I'm confused about, though, is like, what is the physical response that your body has to getting
like
kicked in all those
physiologically.
spots?
Well, I know with the shin, for example, every
Yeah.
time you shin, there's like those micro fractures that then calcify, which then cause the shin to harden. And again, even if the difference between my right and left shin, my right shin is probably double the size of my left one because I'm use my right shin a lot more.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just constant years of training your body to do it. And
But
it
what
just
about
adapts.
the thigh? Like, what about your quads and all the
I
leg?
don't know. I wonder what it is. Is it nerves? Or your nerves are able to withstand the pain? Or I don't know. But it's a big difference. And it's weird because I've been doing it so long where I can usually stand in front of you, give you like little leg taps, and I can kind of see how hard your body is if you can withstand a low kick or not. It's a feeling mechanism.
So you feel how they're responding? You
Well,
feel
yeah,
like how they're
soft it
reacting?
is, how they put their weight, their pressure on it. You can tell. You can really tell. And when you fight someone, and that's where those guys that have 100 professional fights have that, there's a lot of wear and tear, but those guys have a body armor that it really takes a lot to try to damage, those forearms or those leg kicks or... it's just years of accumulated damage and the body hardens up.
It is weird because, like, you see some of the Thais that just blast each other and you're watching them low kick each other and you never see them limping.
No.
And you see this fight that you had with Raymond and you see, like, after, a minute, two in the fight when you kept chopping. There was one moment in the fight in the first round. I remember watching it live. And you caught him with one low kick in the first round. I went, uh-oh, there it goes. You see that little dip, wham, and you see the little dip that their body gives, and like, oh, this is not good.
And you got to think, I've probably sparred with thousands and thousands of different MMA fighters, and as soon as we start sparring, I'll tap the leg once, tap the leg twice, 3 times, and they're like, no, can you lay off the leg? And I'm just like, okay, all right, cool, yeah, I guess so. I'll just hit the other leg. And then if I don't hit the other leg, I'll hit your body. But I mean, yeah, it's like it's a different type of body conditioning.
Is there any way to do it other than just getting kicked there? I mean, does anybody...
I don't think so. Not that I know. I think it's just years of accumulation.
I've heard of dudes like rolling Coke bottles on their shins.
I don't know if that... I've tried
work?
to find research on that. I don't think so. I
So
did
it's
it when
just
I was
time.
young. I'm like, hey, look at me. I'm putting a rolling pin over my shin. But
Right.
I guess it kind of takes out the nerve damage a little bit. I don't know.
Oh, the nerve endings.
The nerve endings, try to numb them out a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it is interesting. It's interesting because it doesn't necessarily make sense. Like when it comes to the muscle of the thighs, like
It's got to come down to nerve, or because it's not really bone that's getting stronger. I don't know.
I would love to talk to a doctor who understands Muay Thai.
It would be good.
Do you know anybody that's like a doctor that trains?
I'll start. I'll find it. I'll tweet you out the answer, man. I'll find it.
Yeah, because it definitely seems like, I mean, especially like we said, the Thais, these guys that have 100+ fights, and you see them getting low kicked, and it doesn't seem to affect them at all. I mean, it's landing, it's an effective strike, but the difference between the way it would affect them versus the way it affect a person that's never been low kicked before.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's the most underrated technique in all of martial arts, I think.
I agree.
Because until you've been low kicked, like once you get low kicked once, you go, oh Jesus.
And it's usually it's usually when you're at those parties and you're drunk, it's like, oh, those leg kicks don't hurt.
Oh my
Those
God.
low kicks don't hurt. And then all of a sudden they're like, just give him one. And I was like, no, you don't want one. I was actually messing with someone once, and I was like, Bruce Lee had the 1-inch punch, and I was like, I'll give you a 1-inch low kick and you won't walk for a month. And he didn't believe it. I'll give anyone, if anyone listening wants to have a 1-inch low kick.
How do you set it up? What do you do?
All I got to do is put my shin 1 inch away and just bang, done.
So like
It's hitting the right part. You got to know where to hit.
So you would have like
bent leg.
almost like you're throwing a kick, like a controlled kick, and stopping at them.
right
and you
there.
stop
And then I'll
right
just
before.
go, boom, right on that part. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, 1-inch low kicks. I'm gonna start it.
You should. You should make a video about
The
it.
1-inch low kick.
Yeah,
I
1-inch
will.
low
Done.
kick challenge.
I bet you I'm gonna do it.
Now, you were saying earlier, and I wanted to go back to this, that your thoughts on fighting have changed from being a fighter to being a coach. How so?
Because I think right now when I was fighting, I had to have a one-dimensional approach, what worked for me. And now as a coach, someone asked me the question. They're like, a new student who's very talented comes to your gym. He's not strong. He's not really as athletic as you. He doesn't have the training background as you. How do you make that guy a world champion? And I was like, that's interesting. I'm like, he's not big, he's not strong, so he's not going to be a great pressure fighter that's going to be able to withstand a lot of damage. So what happened? So I wanted to create a system of fighting that is kind of universal. I don't really want to have, I want to have a system in my fighting at Bazooka Kickboxing that you can go into a street fight, you can go into an MMA fight, you can kickbox. You got to have that knowledge and the skill set to be able to fight everything. And that's my goal as a coach right now, is to make a universal system that can handle anything. So if you got a pressure fight versus move, if you got to keep distance, if you need to jab or box, you got to be able to have it all. I don't agree anymore too much with a one-dimensional approach.
But the one-dimensional approach was good for you as a fighter because you found out where your skills
were,
yeah, more
but not
directed.
You got to look. The way I look at it is, I was an exceptional case. I'm an exceptional athlete that was gifted with a strong body, strong mind, good dedication, very motivated. So it all worked in my favor. But now I have a guy who's fighting amateur kickboxing. How do I train that guy to be successful?
Do you think that helps you as a fighter? Because
Huge.
I know a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, they start coaching. And once they start coaching and teaching lessons, their game just jumps.
It was being a color commentator.
That helps a lot?
Huge. Like, I got to show you, like, after or whatever, I'll show you my notes on what I do, and I'd be interested to see your thoughts on, do you write your own notes for the events?
Notes as far
like
as...
your fighter notes, or are you now just experienced enough to know about the fighters?
It depends entirely on who the fighters are, because many times I'm watching a guy fight for the first time. And if I've never seen someone before, what I like to do is I like to watch some YouTube videos of them. I like to watch them fight. I read what their background is. So
you do a lot of research still,
well,
you have.
See, I say I do research. I say I don't do any research because I would have done it anyway.
Yeah.
Because like I'll do research for Glory. I don't work for Glory.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
still
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like,
you're a fan.
Yes. So if it's like, say if there's a big fight coming up, like here's a perfect example. This Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandamy. They're gonna fight for the UFC featherweight,
I saw the promo
title.
for that. Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is Jermaine Durandamy is a multiple-time world Muay Thai champion, and who's had a hard time dealing with the clinch, dealing with people taking her down, dealing with the other aspects of MMA. And she's trying to find her groove. But as
Dutch
a striker,
girl, right?
Yes, Dutch girl, nasty striker, real tall.
I saw her.
long.
Was it UFC 200?
Was she in that? I don't know.
Or was it the Brazil card with Cyborg or something? She looked vicious.
She's vicious.
Yeah,
She's a
she looks
very
really
good
good.
striker. So what I'm curious, it's very interesting because, Holly, who looked like a fucking dynamo when she fought Ronda, because Ronda fought the absolute worst kind of fight that you could fight with Holly. Run
sure.
right at her.
Go straight, go at her.
Yeah. Because, she wanted to bully her, and you just can't. Holly's so good at evasion, so good at using angles, and so good at stopping and then countering.
Straight punching.
Yes, straight punching, and that weird oblique kick that a lot of the Winklejohn guys like to do to the thigh. Do you use that kick at all?
Not really, no.
It's a weird kick, right? A lot of guys use that kick. I mean, have you, there's some guys that really know how to land that well, and I'm starting to see it. I'm thinking, man, it's an interesting kick, but the Winklejohn guys in particular, or gals too, Holly is really good at that.
It's like the front kick. It's when Anderson Silva knocked out Belfort, and everyone was like, whoa, the front kick. Look at this amazing new weapon. I was like, it's probably the first kick ever taught in traditional martial arts. It's just he made it so popular, and then all of a sudden you see it as a new trend where everyone started throwing front kicks to the face. It became like a new popular little trend there for a little bit that, hey, look, front kicks work again. It's just they were forgotten about, and that's what I'm hoping with the low kick. They were forgotten about, and they come back.
Yeah. I think there's room for a lot of different kicks in MMA that aren't there yet. And one of them that we're seeing in some organizations is axe kicks.
Yeah.
You know, I saw some. Well, there was that guy that was fighting in MMA for a while. Did you ever see Adlon Amagov?
I don't think
Who's
so.
a wild fighter, man, and
He's
he
no longer part of the UFC?
No, he retired. He stopped fighting in MMA, but he was really talented, man. He knocked out, it was TJ Wahlberger, I believe, in the UFC.
With an axe kick?
No, I forget what he kicked him with and punched him with too, but he had wicked kicks and incredible flexibility. So he had this ability to, you know, utilize techniques that you don't necessarily think of as knockout techniques, but he would, you know, smash guys with axe kicks and front kicks and round kicks and just.
For those the kickboxing fans listening, Andy Hoog.
Oh yeah. Well, Andy,
spinning hook kicks to the leg.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a guy fighting on LA on the show you're at, Gudo Innocence. He fought in the UFC twice.
Yes. Yeah.
He fought in Strike Force once. He has a kickboxing finish with a spinning heel kick to the leg.
I saw that. Yeah, his wheel kicks are nasty, man.
Yeah.
All
what
of his
about
kicks.
that other kid on the last UFC? Yair, is it?
Yair Rodriguez, yeah.
Wow.
Woo!
Yeah.
That was
Wow.
hard. That was hard to watch.
Yeah, it was very tough to watch, but the kid's incredible.
Oh, he 360 roundhouse kicked BJ Penn in the face.
I don't know how BJ didn't go down.
Oh, BJ's got an iron chin, man.
Yeah.
Lorenz Larkin. Pull up Lorenz Larkin versus who did he stop? What is Lorenz Larkin's? God damn it! Why can't I remember this right now?
John Howard?
No,
Nope. Okay.
Lorenz Larkin's recent fights.
Okay.
Neil Magny. Jesus Christ! Pull up Lorenz Larkin, Neil Magny, because I want to show him that oblique kick to the body.
One of my guys out there that's in the green room, Matt Special, he actually sent me the fight. I was too busy with Glory notes, but he sent me that exact fight to watch.
Lorenz Larkin is a motherfucker,
Yeah.
dude. He's really good.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of spinning wheel kicks to the thigh too. He does a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of wild
interesting.
shit.
Why not? I think any kick should be able to be thrown at different levels.
Sure.
And that's
yeah.
what makes that kick more effective.
Yeah.
If you're constantly going at one level, it becomes easy to defend. So you got to change the levels. That's why same thing as southpaws. Guys don't kick enough from a southpaw. Or if they do, it's constantly one leg. It's either the inside leg. They're not attacking the back legs, the bodies, the heads. You got to change levels. Not enough southpaws or changing levels with that left kick.
Do you experiment or use any traditional martial arts techniques? Like, do you ever throw side kicks or spinning
Not anymore.
kicks? No,
Not anymore. I've really I've really been taught to keep really tight on a shield.
Mm-hmm.
But now my whole style has actually been trying to add dimensions to it. So I've been boxing a lot more. And even though, I've had the concussions, doesn't mean I stopped being a martial artist. This is when my real martial arts training has evolved. When I was fighting, I couldn't do all this stuff when I was fighting. I didn't have time to sit there. Like, for example, the last 3 months, I fought southpaw. I've been training southpaw. It's a new dimension to my game. So now's the time I get to be a full-time martial artist and learn.
Watch how he throws this oblique kick to the body. Back up a little bit because this is the end of the fight.
He's setting it up with the low kick.
Well, he sets it up with everything, but what's interesting is the distance where he throws this oblique kick. He throws it like right there.
Boom.
See how he throws it? It's crazy.
It's kind of like heel in, toe out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, heel in, toe out. And he's so fast with it.
Do you know why I like that? Because if the elbow's in,
Mm-hmm.
it gets the foot probably just outside of the elbow
Yeah.
or inside. It kind of follows the inside forearm nicely.
Yeah, Lorenz is the best I've ever seen throwing that kick and throwing it like right in there.
He tried
right there and missed, but he throws it from tight quarters, and guys think he's going to throw low kick. So he mixes it up with that. He's using the low kick, and then he sets it up with either the oblique kick or the low kick, and he constantly varies them.
Because that kick traditionally is meant to hit with the heel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's hitting it with the heel, but it's so weird to look at because you're like, oh yeah, you can do that too.
But his setup is unreal with the low kick, though.
Yes. His setup is great, and this was a great fight for him because I knew Lorenz was super talented before this, but Neil Magny was a highly rated guy, and Lorenz just ran through him. I mean, is the difference in the striking. Magny is a really good all-around fighter. He's really well-rounded. He's got incredible endurance, but what Lorenz was able to do is avoid all this stuff, avoid the ground game, keep the fight in his wheelhouse, which is in the stand-up, and just show how much more technical he is on his feet and how much quicker he is at closing the gap.
Yeah, and he's staying long, too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and he's fighting a tall guy, too.
Yeah, if you think about it, if Larkin's got the shorter arms, why is he going to sit there and want to box with a guy with longer arms? You got to change your distance, and the low kick's perfect. It worked, set up perfectly.
Now back to that's it. Now back to Muay Thai and elbows. Don't you think that elbows are well? Obviously, they're really effective. You know, and elbows from the clinch and knees from the clinch, they're obviously really effective techniques. Why do you like rules that don't have those in?
I remember listening to your podcast and someone asked, I think you were talking about how you feel Muay Thai is like the purest art of stand-up fighting.
I think it
makes sense.
Yeah. I like all fighting. I like MMA. You know, obviously, love it. I think MMA is probably my favorite thing to watch. But what I like about Muay Thai is when you're seeing the clinch, you're using all the potential weapons from inside that position. Whereas in kickboxing, they will separate you.
It's just, for me personally, why I don't like the clinch, it slows the fight down. I'm not saying it's because you can be a crappy outside fighter, but be so strong and dominant in the clinch and win all your fights in the clinch. Right. So, I mean, I think it's just a rule set. And I mean, each guy's going to be different from what they're good at or not good at. And it's how you train. But you have to change your style. You have to change. Like, even if I were to fight, we talked about kickboxing and MMA, you have to change your style. But even if you fight between kickboxing and Muay Thai, you have to change quite a bit. You have to stay longer. If you're a fighter like myself who doesn't want to get into the clinch, you have to fight differently. You have to use triangle stepping in your footwork. You got to use more distance. You got to stay away. I could maybe only throw a 2-3 hit combination before I have to exit and move again because I know he's going to try to grab me and clinch me and you know, slice me up with his elbows.
Is there a more difficult transition? Like, do you think that the transition between kickboxing and Muay Thai is more difficult, or the transition between Muay Thai and kickboxing? Because we're seeing a lot of Muay Thai champions that are now entering into kickboxing.
I'm going to say kickboxing
results.
to Muay Thai.
More difficult.
It's more difficult.
Why is that?
Because you're adding all these new weapons. So you all of a sudden now have these weapons that you're not used to. Where with Muay Thai, you kind of take away some, but you still have your other weapons that are effective. And I had this conversation with a lot of the Muay Thai fighters. They were saying how you got to look at the success of Muay Thai fighters in kickboxing. You have Sitachai, Sitsong Pinang, who's a savage. He's the current lightweight champion. Fighters like Sanchai, Muay Thai legend, came in his first kickboxing fight, dominated. This young Thai kid that just came in France, Panamarung Kiat Mukau, he came in and just left kicked one weapon, shut down an aggressive punch to low kicker. Just one kick, left kick, left kick, left kick. And these guys have been fighting for so long, it's fighting to them. Fighting at the end of the day is still fighting. So these Thai guys who are following traditional Muay Thai are still being very successful in kickboxing. One of the biggest, Buakaw. That guy dominated.
Yeah, Buakaw's a great example of it, and still around too. Sanchai is really interesting because he's.
Did you watch his Glory fight?
Yes, I did. Yeah, he's fun to watch, man.
Oh yeah, tricky, slipping. He'll fight big guys, small guys. He put a whole social media campaign to fight Conor McGregor.
In MMA?
Yeah. I think so.
Does he know how to wrestle?
No, I don't think so.
Well, good luck with all that.
What's your thoughts on Conor and Floyd? That's a big thing right now. Could that even happen?
It could happen. Yeah. Floyd is, again, the best defensive fighter ever. And, you know, I mean, in a straight boxing match, you got to give the advantage to him. You just have to. You have to.
Definitely.
Traditional wisdom would say that he's going to box Conor's face off. That's sure. You would look at it. You would look at what he's been able to do. But Conor's a fucking freak, man. He's a weird guy. His mind is so fucking strong, and he eats pressure. He just eats it. Like when he stepped into that ring with Jose Aldo, he looked like he didn't have a care in the world.
No, he's just that confidence and that belief, man. It's just through
staggering.
The roof.
And he had talked so much shit for so long. And Aldo was just fuming. He was steaming at the brain when he got in there. Oh, he was so emotionally invested in that fight. It was almost like he had never been disrespected like that. And to be disrespected for months. I mean, they had done this huge world tour where Conor stole his belt at a press conference and was yelling at him. And I mean, it was madness. And then to have the fight, and then Conor starches him with one punch 13 seconds into the fight. Like, wow.
Yeah. That stirred up a lot of attention. Man.
Obviously, Floyd is not Jose Aldo. Floyd is, it would be a boxing match. In an MMA match, Conor would fucking kill him.
For sure.
He would kill him. He'd kick the shit out of him.
Different.
It wouldn't even
totally
be close.
Different.
Floyd would never get close to him. Conor kicked his fucking legs out from under him.
Every time.
Yeah, it would be brutal. But in a boxing match, one thing that Conor's got going for him, he's a way bigger guy. I know he fought at 145, but Jesus Christ, he looked like a dead man when he made 45.
Oh, yeah. His shoulders are broad. Like, he's
walking around at 170-ish, somewhere around then, and I don't think Floyd is. Floyd is a smaller guy than that. And again, what you were saying about with kickboxing, I think the same holds true with boxing, that those fighters, they're not cutting the kind of weight that MMA fighters are cutting. So I don't know what they would weigh in at. I would assume it'd probably be like 155, somewhere around there. And then once they got into the octagon, or the ring rather, it would be a boxing match, Floyd would probably have a disadvantage weight-wise of somewhere around 15 pounds.
Yeah, no, I can't see it happening.
But if they did... Floyd, look, Canelo had a big weight advantage over him in that fight too, and Floyd shut that shit down.
Yeah.
He's so good at boxing, man. He's just so good. He's so skillful.
The more I follow and train and learn boxing, something I wish I started a lot earlier on in my career. It's like you only have two weapons, and you all of a sudden have to make this complex strategy through, creating openings. And with kicks, you have a whole other dimension, elbows, clinch. But with boxing, man, you got two fists that you have to make land. It's tough, man. And I get why it's called the sweet science.
Now, when you are training, are you sparring?
Right, I do. But I make sure I spar with the right guys and that kind of thing. But I still do spar.
And are you worried at all about getting hit when you're doing this?
Yes and no.
Yes, and you just love it too much?
I just love it, man. I'm not stupid, and that's the last thing you could ever call me. I do everything very calculated, very smart. So if I know there's an issue, I slow it down, or if there's an aggressive guy, but I still spar, and I still start very controlled, and I could pick it up if I want. It's just, why was the question sometimes. Like, right. I don't need to get in there and have those sparring matches where I'm trying to take the guy's head off. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, obviously the consequences for you are so much more obvious and intense, knowing what you've been through. I mean, is that in the back of your head at all while you're doing it?
Sometimes. What's your take on these fighters taking a new approach on not sparring anymore?
Well, Donald Cerrone is taking that approach, and it seems really effective for him. But I think part of what's doing well for him, I mean, obviously, he has excellent timing. Obviously, he's very experienced as a fighter already, and he likes to stay active. But his take on it was that he was beating himself up too much in the gym, that he was sparring too many hard rounds, and he would go into these fights already damaged, and he just couldn't take shots.
Well, that's the philosophy in Muay Thai. They don't really spar hard in Thailand. It's
right.
Because they fight very often, too.
Right.
But if you're not fighting very often, would you need that sparring?
It's a good question.
I think there's stupid sparring, and then there's quality sparring. I think there's so many different ways to spar. If you're constantly going in there and you're trying to slug it out and getting sloppy, that's not good sparring.
Right.
But terrible. You can get a good guy that kind of really sets his shots up really good, goes hard to the body on low kicks. When I spar my guys, we're trying to take each other out with body shots and low kicks. Like, if I finish my training partner to the body, I feel like the king. You know what I mean? I walk around, I'm just like walking like I own the place, man.
To the body.
To the body, low kicks. Those are okay, but you don't need to finish guys to the head in sparring.
Right. That's the Dutch way, right? They would go 100% to the legs and to the body.
Speaking of some of the Dutch guys, like Jason Wilness, who's fighting, his coach was telling me they do somewhere along the lines of 50 rounds of sparring a week.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Like, again, I don't know how intense or the type of shots, but they rely a lot on sparring.
Well, Wilness's fight with Simon Marcus, what a fight that was.
Eesh.
Jesus Christ,
Eesh.
That was an amazing fight. And Simon Marcus looked so fucking good in the beginning of
first
that fight.
round.
Oh, my God, he was just exploding. But it seemed like he drained his gas tank.
Yeah, got too cocky with that head movement.
Yeah, what was that about? Like, he at one point in the fight, like, almost like invited him to punch him and just kind of moved his head a little bit.
And then they gave him a count for that too.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't have called that one a count, but the referee did a good stop on that because Wilness was just unloading.
Well, definitely on the stoppage. But it seemed like when they gave him a count, maybe the referee was seeing some shit we weren't seeing, because it seemed like Simon, like, from that point on, started to wither.
Yeah.
That was crazy because you look how good he looked in the beginning of that fight. He was blasting those kicks in. It's Jesus. And he was fucking going for it, man. Which is, when you look at Simon, he's so shredded. You know, I mean, he's a specimen. And his style is so predicated on that. He's like reliant on that. He's just ba-bam, ba-bam, you know.
He yells in the ring, like, yeah, intense.
But he just couldn't keep it up, man. He couldn't keep that pace up.
But this is why I like this fight with Adesanya. Did you ever see his real stuff? They call him the style bender.
Style bender. Yeah.
Guy is all over, like wicked. He's
Super
throwing
technical.
low line, technical, good distance control, southpaw, orthodox, spin kick, boxes. He's good.
He's
so
amazing.
on paper, that is the style to beat that Dutch style, straightforward fighting, right? You want to fight on angles, use distance, use movement.
Yeah.
Where, how do you beat someone like Stylebender?
Right.
Constant pressure, you know, head-to-head fighting, low kicks. So you're going to see Wilnis try to use that head-to-head pressure fighting like we saw with me and Raymond Daniels versus Adesanya trying to use that movement on the outside, pick his shots, fight on angles. So on paper, both of these guys have the style to beat one another. And I think that's why that fight's super exciting for me to watch.
Well, Stylebender has been toying with the idea of fighting in MMA too, and I'm really interested.
He's 9-0 in MMA.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm
9
sorry,
knockouts.
toying with the idea of fighting the UFC, I should say.
Yeah.
And I'm really
He
interested to
wants it.
see like how he manages training and competing in both sports, because that was a giant issue with Joe Schilling. You know, Joe Schilling was trying to do both things at the same time.
Yeah.
When he just decided that, you know, it's just not really smart, and he wasn't able to fight to his best ability in MMA.
No. Too many limits.
Yeah. And you don't have much time. He's in his 30s. Like how much time is there in a day? How much time is there in your life? I mean, if you want to be excellent at one thing.
It's a lot. That's why if you're a real perfectionist, MMA is tough.
Yeah.
Like just you have to be okay with not being excellent at everything.
Yeah.
And that's a hard concept for a martial artist and an athlete, to be like, hey, like, you know, your striking is just going to be okay, but we got to work on your ground, so don't worry about your striking now. There's only so much time in a day you can do training.
That's a really interesting thing that you just said. You have to be really okay at that, because like if you do jiu-jitsu, you're going to get strangled by black belts. But you go, well, if we were kickboxing, I'd fuck that dude up.
Exactly.
And you have to have that in your head.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, if you're doing kickboxing with a guy like Buakaw, you know, like, well, you know, you're not as good as him at kickboxing. Well, I'll fucking take his ass down. Then you can't kick me.
You got to
like,
be okay with it. Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things that George was so amazing at. St. Pierre was so amazing at being able to do whatever he wanted to, dependent upon what you thought he was going to do.
Oh, he was definitely above average in everything.
Yes.
But you put George St. Pierre in a kickboxing fight.
Yeah. He wouldn't be the best.
It wouldn't be the best.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, he's great at it. He's phenomenal at everything else.
Well,
I think that's what made him so dominant. He's above average on everything.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And also incredibly unpredictable and creative. That was one of the best
And
things
athletic.
about,
One of the most athletic guys I've seen in the sport.
Yeah, he's a really interesting case too, because George didn't really wrestle competitively in college or in high school. He learned wrestling from a bunch of Russian nationals in Montreal.
Which could be good. You lose a lot of those things that aren't needed.
Yeah. Well, George is also, he's so humble. Like as confident as he was as a champion and as a dominant champion, he's so humble. Like you could teach George things and he would just completely absorb it. He would never, you know, he wasn't the type of guy that would have a hard time learning new things. He was very open to stuff.
Because I always follow him on social media and stuff. And I hope I'm actually trying to get out to TriStar. I was talking to Faraz a little bit. I would love to go out there and train with their team and to see if, you know, how we can, you know, connect together. I think that'd be an awesome connection.
It would be awesome. I think he's still going to fight. I mean, he's still talking
When I
about
heard
it.
that, that's when I hit up Faraz. Like, hey, man, like, shit, call me in, man. Let me help you guys
Put
on
me
his
in, coach.
striking, man. Yeah, tag me in. I got to do some work with GSP when he did that Kickboxer Vengeance movie. And it was cool because he came in, he's like... never met George in my life at this point. He's like, Valtellini, I'm a fan of yours. I watch you fight Raymond Daniels. I was like, what? And so for him, because he comes from that karate background, so for him to, you know, say that he liked my style and he was a fan of mine from my Raymond Daniels fight, I was like, shit, it's awesome.
Well, they brought Raymond Daniels in to prepare Roy McDonald
That's
when he
right.
fought
And they
Stephen
were always,
Wonderboy. Yeah.
Then I think even GSP went to Daniels' fight, Bellator kickboxing fight.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's another good thing, too, that Bellator is holding those really high-level kickboxing bouts, too. You know, Kevin Ross is over there.
Yeah, he's been doing well.
Yeah, and Gaston Bolanos is now going to fight. He's going to fight MMA for Bellator.
I saw that. I was actually talking to their coach today. I was like, man, we got to get Gaston and you he'd be good in the UFC, but if we get him on Glory, I think he needs that good platform to really grow and be consistent with. I think he'd be a perfect fit for Glory.
I mean, as far as like coverage and as far
Well,
as...
yeah, he gets that full-time attention, and who knows? We'll see how good he is in MMA. Is he just a phenomenal striker trying to test himself in MMA? How was his ground skills? I don't know.
I know he can wrestle. I know he's a good wrestler.
But like at a professional wrestling level, like ready to go kind of style?
It's hard to say because what I'm hearing is from just guys who train with him and guys who've trained MMA with him. They're surprised at how good his wrestling is.
Okay.
Like he's just a really strong, athletic guy, learns quick. But his Muay Thai is obviously very, very good.
Oh, yeah.
Very
Those
high level.
elbows, I see
Yeah.
those spinning elbows. He's
Yeah.
killing guys in lion fight with it.
Yeah.
But he'd be perfect for Glory.
Yeah. Now, do you follow all these other organizations? You follow Bellator
everything.
Kickboxing?
Yeah, I follow it. I follow all fighting as much as I can.
Now, when you watch, like, say, if you watch Lion Fight or you watch Bellator or any of these other organizations, do you, like, make notes like, oh, well, I'd like to see this guy over in Glory?
I do. I try to hint it out. Yeah.
What is Glory's plans? I mean, I know you said that they have 18 events this
shows
year,
coming
which is
up.
amazing.
And they're going to be split between, we got some good investors in Glory from China. So we're going to actually try to get a few shows out in China. We're looking at South America. And then the rest mixed between the U.S. and Europe.
That's awesome. Yeah,
18 shows. And this is the first time that Glory's coming out and saying, listen, there's 18 shows. In our December Collision show, we got to announce Glory LA. We're going to go to Chicago next. So we're having that time to show everyone that, hey, man, there's 2-3 shows coming up. Here's time to prepare and plan, because when you don't have that funding all the time, it's kind of hard to have those multiple events and have that time to build up the shows properly. And now that we have it, I think the sport's just going to go crazy.
I hope so, man. I really do. And I think it's awesome they're going to have more than one a month. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah.
People need consistency.
One a month plus 6 more. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, every other month they're going to have 2 events then. That's
what we want.
That's incredible. That's really good. And, like, as far as coverage, I know you guys are on UFC Fight Pass. It's also sometimes on ESPN, right?
It's on ESPN 3, and sometimes we get ESPN 2 live. So it's all depending, but I'm hoping we can get on. That's a huge step because we started off at Spike TV. And then when we
Which
moved,
was great.
It was okay. Yeah, it was going well.
It was great for me. I can watch it.
Yeah. But then what was happening was when we went to ESPN, it's just a whole different market now. If we want to hit those casual fans, ESPN's going to be the place to do it.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. ESPN 3, though, is weird.
We need to get it. And when we're on live on 2, it seems to do well. So we just got to keep it going.
Now, what are they going to do with Rico and Bader? Because the Rico Verhoeven Bader Hari fight was probably one of the most hyped up heavyweight fights of all time.
13,000 people. Nuts.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like when Bader Hari is in the building, like people know he's a superstar.
Yes.
Like he doesn't even have to fight and he's a superstar. And it was in Oberhausen, Germany, which is where it borders Holland. So all the Holland fans, a lot of the Dutch Moroccans came in. When he came out, crazy. People were just going nuts trying to rush and get him. He's a superstar. So it needs fights like that. And it's kind of like that Conor McGregor. He builds that energy around him that people just need to tune into. And I think that's what Bader does. So that rematch is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
So I think Rico is going to go fight. He has some other fights that he has to fight. There's contender tournaments that winner he gets to fight. Like he has a fight with Ishmael Lant planned, I think. If you watch Collision, there's Ben Jamal Sadiq, who was that big monster heavyweight.
Yeah.
He's looking good. You have guys like Jafar Wilness, who are doing really well. Benjamin Adekboy. So there's so many fights for Rico, and I think Bader's going to be, once he heals up, and then maybe they'll do another one next year, but nothing planned right now.
Yeah.
There's got to be another fight.
Yeah,
So-
it has to happen. But, I mean, how long does it take before Bader can be back in action? He had a broken forearm. Is that what happened in
I
the
think
fight?
he tore a ligament.
Oh, that's what it was?
I think it was a torn ligament.
Huh.
And it's I've rewatched it a few times, trying to see where in the fight it happened. And it's very tough to actually see where it happened. But apparently he tore a ligament in his forearm.
And it just wasn't working right. You could tell he looked down and like
Because it
something's-
didn't look like, when trying to find it, there was no real time where the damage happened where you seen him do it. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
But I think it's somewhere it must have torn and he just couldn't take the pain anymore.
God, that was so weird. But it was interesting because Botter, who's just a notorious psycho, came out in the first round pretty controlled and measured, and approached the fight intelligently too. Said, no, we're going to do 3 rounds. I haven't been fighting in a long time. I don't want a 5-round fight. I want a 3-round fight.
Didn't care about the title.
Yeah.
It wasn't for the world title.
Yeah.
I think what he wanted to do was have this 3-rounder, then let them meet again for the 5 rounds.
So if it's a torn tendon or ligament, rather, that is a much more invasive issue, right? That's a long
I haven't really gotten an update. I'll try to find out for us.
Usually ligaments take a long time to heal, maybe even need surgery or something like that. And if that's the case, you might be out a year, unfortunately.
That fight needs to happen. We need to get more people. We need to get more people on, and that's what got everyone hyped.
Yeah.
Got everyone excited about kickboxing again.
Botter's such a personality, and that's the kindest use of that word, personality, ever. Yeah. Just got to keep him out of jail between now and the next fight.
Even in the post-fight interview, he goes to Rico and he looked at him and he said, "You know what? You did good. But next time, I'll knock you the fuck out." Yeah. And everyone was like, "Holy shit!" Like already, the next fight's already hyped up. Even after the loss, so we're like, this is what the sport needs. Let's get attention. And I keep trying to say, and I came out publicly a little while ago. Fighters need to, in the kickboxing realm, need to do more to promote themselves. They can't constantly rely on Glory or other people to kind of promote them. They got to go out there and really try to build themselves. And the more they build themselves, the more the sport's going to build.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just so hard for fighters to figure out how to promote themselves. It's hard enough to be a great fighter. It's hard enough to train hard and get in shape and fight smart. And to concentrate on social media too, and you see a lot of fails, a lot of fake trash talking that just comes out clunky and
terrible.
But then there's always these guys like Connor that do it, and you just go, Jesus, he's so effortless with it.
Yeah,
but that's
Chael Sonnen.
Yes, but that's their personality,
It just happens naturally.
Yeah,
sure, everyone would love to be Connor, right? Just not many people can.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's got Floyd Mayweather saying that that's the only fight that he's interested in.
Yeah.
Hey, Jamie, what the hell's going on with that thing up there?
I don't know. It started doing that. I think it's just like resetting itself. I can't change
Is it YouTube?
I'm not controlling it right now. I don't know.
What is
the TV? Like,
the TV's
itself.
whacking out?
I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I'll turn it off and reset it.
Oh, okay. Because I wanted to see that other fight that you were telling me about, the highlight reel.
Oh, with Mehdi Baghdad?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a wicked one.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a little clip of just me throwing different combinations, and then you see the big elbow. It's on YouTube. Valtellini versus Mehdi Baghdad.
We'll put that up, and we'll talk about that too. So right now, you are 100% commentating on Glory. You're taking some time off
my teaching job
of your high school teaching. So what do your days look like?
Right now, it's just me training again, and I feel I want to get back into the first time. I want to try doing different things. Like my body needs to be stretched out a little bit. The years of damage on my joints, I want to start doing more yoga. I'm going to try some yoga out. I want to create a kickboxing, a professional kickboxing program for other pros to come in and have daytime training and stuff like that.
Oh, that's
so
beautiful.
There's lots of things. So this whole fight was all about different. And he's good. He's doing pretty well in the UFC, I think, isn't he? He's 50.
Yeah, no, he's a tough guy. That's such a gorgeous combination, man. That left hook to the body and the low kick, that Ernesto Hoost combination. He's another one of my all-time favorites.
He is my favorite.
God, he's so good.
There was one highlight that he has on that I've literally watched probably 1,000,000 times.
Why is he cheering and
because he couldn't take the low kicks anymore, so it was his way of
hyping it up.
Yeah, you'll see the elbow soon. This one right here. See that elbow?
Yeah.
Watch what happens.
Wow. Gash right away, huh? It's those slicing elbows,
but that's it. That's all he really threw. Was a downward elbow.
Wow, that is a fucking gash, man.
He basically only hit me with that shot, and that was in like the 4th round.
Wow. Now, were you worried about the fight getting stopped here?
They probably should have stopped it.
Really?
But I mean, I was okay. As a fighter, you're never going to say stop the fight.
Right.
But probably looking back, and then right away I just come back and say, you know what? Let me give me that leg.
Was the blood going into your eyes at this point?
A little bit. I remember, and this was in 3D apparently that they filmed it. And
really?
Literally, yeah, I don't know. So I would have loved to have seen it.
Man, that is a gash.
That's not even the big one. The big one's in my head that you can't even see.
On top?
Yeah, it's just right through the hairline.
That is such a nasty combination, man.
Yeah, but he basically hit me with 2 elbows the whole fight.
That's crazy.
2 gashes every time he did.
Well, you can't even see the scar, man. You got a good plastic surgeon.
No, it was the backstage doctor that's his face when he started cutting my starting to stitch me was like, he was making all these faces. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to know that.
A doctor was making a face like that? What kind of fucking doctor is
I don't know.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
So, do you have any desire to compete again? Are you sure? Have you like figured your path out from here on out?
Glory's been too good, man. I've been loving this commentary gig. It's a new challenge. It's new. So for me, I have this is the first time, even when I've won my world title, I'd work during the day as a teacher, eat my lunch as I drove to the gym, and then I would train at night. I won a world title working a full-time job. Wow. Because it's just at that point there wasn't enough. I'm used to a certain type of living, and I don't want to have to fight to survive. And my whole thing was I'm going to use fighting to build it as a platform. So now, because I have a university education, I'm able to have a commentary job. I'm able to run my own gym. I'm able to have other things going on. So I was very lucky to build a good platform that I didn't have to rely on fighting for my income. So right now things are too good. There's more money on the sitting in a suit and, trying to be Joe Rogan. So I mean, it's more money. It's better on my health, and I'm
you're
signed
happy
all
and
next
enjoying
year.
it.
I'm loving it.
That's
I'm genuinely loving it.
What was your education in?
Health and physical education.
That's interesting. So when you look at training methods, like some of the methods that are being employed today, some of the various strength and conditioning methods, what do you? Is there anything that you think that really stands out?
Well, the main thing for me is guys in combat sports who are using CrossFit as a form of weight training for fighting. I don't necessarily agree with that based on many things, because you're doing an unsafe exercise like a deadlift or a clean, and you're doing it over time, where those movements are made to develop power, hip strength, they're not meant for endurance. So a lot of guys are hurting themselves. Like I saw some CrossFit guys, and they're doing this terrible rounded back deadlifts, and they're just trying to get the bar up in weight, and they're hurting themselves, and they're doing too much. But a sport-specific, properly tailored strength program is very important. But CrossFitting is just killing guys. Their body, the damage on the joints, it wasn't made to help you enhance. There's different ways to do it in a safer way that helps protect your body. Too many people are, canceling fights with injuries. I think they overtrain. They're doing things that, things like CrossFit, where they're constantly killing their bodies.
It's interesting because some people think that, fighters are overtraining, and some people think, no, the problem is they just haven't built themselves up to the point where they can do this the way they need to.
Overtraining, man.
You think it's overtraining?
They're overtraining.
Now, when you were fighting, what did you do any kind of strength and conditioning?
I was huge on it. I was very big on it. It's very complex. It's very difficult to explain, but in a short term, it's like it's a periodization. So right after my fight, I would go into a hypertrophy phase where I tried to build myself, because during your camp, you're losing weight. You're trying to break down muscle because you're constantly training. You're not eating as much. So I would go through a hypertrophy phase, which is build and get big as strong as I possibly can. Closer to fight time, I build that muscle into more explosive power. So that's when I start doing, instead of high volume reps, I'm starting to kind of lower my rep count. I'll do 5 sets of 5 on squat. I'll do deadlifts to 5, and it's now translating that muscle and that size into power. From there, you got to get the power phase turns into more of an explosive phase. So I start turning that power into that explosive. So I'll start doing like med ball throws, explosive jumping. I'll box squat instead of a regular squat. And even when you're in that hypertrophy phase and when you're building muscle, the whole point is to break your body down. So you're sore. Everyone knows how sore and how shitty they feel 24 to 48 hours after a workout. And that's good because your body's breaking down and it has to get stronger. But when your goal is to fight and be good at your sport, you can't have that soreness because it's going to take away from your training. So that's why we really have to periodize our training to make sure we can peak on fight night.
There's a lot of talk in MMA circles that strength and conditioning is the most important thing, that once you're in camp, that's what you should concentrate on, is your cardio, your endurance, and that your fight skills actually come in secondary because you already know how to fight. There's some people that believe that what you need to do is work on your fight skills all the other time, not that you abandon them, but that they take second place, and that the most important thing is having a phenomenal gas tank.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think fighting, you have to you're fighting, so you have to fight. You have to practice what you're doing.
Do you think
I think the most important is your mind.
The mind.
The mind is number one.
Did you involve yourself in any sort of mental training? Do you meditate?
I was naturally gifted with it. I was naturally had the ability to be able to block things. That could have been my years of sports background, but man, come fight time, I barely even thought of the fight. People are like, "Oh, you're going to Japan next week to fight 2 fights in one night." I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll deal with it when I have to get there," kind of thing. I put my work in. The more you stress about it, the more you release the cortisone, more that your body breaks itself down, the more stressed you get, the less sleep you're gonna have. All terrible shit when you're fighting in a few days, right? So my whole strategy was just to say, I do my work. And the problem with you said about overtraining, and guys fight, then they party, they eat like shit, they constantly don't focus on fighting. Like, hey, you're fighting in 8 weeks. Then they go, oh shit, I got to do a crash course and get up to shape, and then they overtrain. A true martial artist doesn't look at the fight on a fight basis. It looks at longevity. I'm looking at, okay, for this fight, my boxing might improve a little bit, but I have to improve something else. And there's constantly improvements in all areas. So as soon as you're done your fight, it's healthy to take a week or 2 off. Some guys 3 weeks, depending on the damage you had. But you got to get working again. You got to get back to sharpening your tools, your weapons, your mind. You got to get back into it and constantly training. You got to learn 24/7. I don't agree with guys who think they can just train for camps.
No, I think you're
8-week
right
camps.
about that.
A real fighter, a real athlete, a real martial artist is going to train all year round.
Yeah, you have to look at it also in terms of you're involved in one of the most dangerous pursuits athletically than someone can engage in. And any time that you're getting better is going to take away some damage that you could possibly sustain. It's going to make you better at administering damage. It's going to make you better. It's just a matter of staying the course and being disciplined.
You have to work it.
Yeah.
And I mean, intensity changes. You're not going to be, right after your fight, you're not going to be training at that hard intensity that you were before the fight, but it's still important to constantly train and constantly improve.
Now, when you say that you were kind of naturally good at it mentally, no one coached you into how to relax about it? You just kind of instinctively knew that's the way to do it? It just
worked. I knew I had to do it. I knew I had to do it. Like for me especially, I wasn't fighting guys with my level of experience. Like you're like, hey, my first fight with Glory, I fought a legend in the sport, Murat Durecci. And when Glory signed me, right after that fight we watched with Mehdi Baghdad, I got an email from a random guy at this point. I'm now friends with him. But it's like, hey, I can get you fights. I'm like, yeah, bullshit. Everybody can get me fights. And then I sent him like, yeah, here's my manager. Go off. And then they're like, hey, we want to sign you to Glory, just like a few hours before that Mehdi Baghdad fight. So I was like, wicked, because this is what I wanted, right? My dream's here. So like, oh, your first fight is against Murat Durecci in Turkey. I was like, okay. I never really, the same Murat Durecci that I think it is. So I looked it up. I was like, yeah, it's the same guy. He had like 90 fights. It was my 7th. In his hometown. I'm going to press conferences with Gokhan Saki, Daniel Gida, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have 6 professional fights and all the Turkish cameras are all around us, and I didn't know what was going on. But I was confident in myself. I believed in myself. I knew I had the skill to do it. I looked at my coach and I'm like, can I beat this guy? And he's like, yeah, you'll kill him. I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. Wow. And then at that point, I just had that much confidence and belief in myself that nothing mattered.
Now, when you go into a fight like that and you approach a fight like that and you're saying that these guys had so much more experience than you, so you had to almost approach the fight as a more experienced fighter?
Yeah, and I did. My whole thing was I knew what I was really good at. And I couldn't, with someone with 100 fights, you're so comfortable in there. And if I play that relaxed fighting game with them, it's not a good look. They're better at picking their shots probably. I'd still probably beat them. I'm not going to say that. But looking before the fight, I'm going to make them fight my fight. If I fight their fight, there's a good chance they're going to beat me. So I went in and basically, you have to fight this fight in order to beat me. And this was my strength. I was stronger than most of the guys I fought because I had a good strength and conditioning program. My, actually, who's outside, Costa Clarianos, he was strength and conditioning coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs in Canada. So he knew a lot. He was amazing. So I was the strongest guy that I've ever... I haven't seen anyone who's really stronger than me in the ring. So I went in there and I fought my fight. Good coaching. Paul Minhas, good coaching. So everything was just on point for me.
Now, do you do any visualization? Did you do any sort of meditation?
It just happened naturally.
Nothing planned out?
I would just be driving my car and I'm thinking about how it feels to win and how I'm going to win. And it just happened naturally. And then I kind of blocked it off where I didn't even think about it. The last thing you want to do is go to your bed at night and think about a fight. It's terrible. Then you're like, oh, shit, what if I get knocked out? Oh, man, everyone's watching me. Who's watching this? Like, yeah, it gets scary. So you got to learn to be able to block it off. And I think that's where my teaching job helped a little bit. Because when I was in my teaching job, I really didn't think of the fight. I was like, oh, I'll deal with it after. Because it's a lot. Fighting is a lot of stress. A lot of guys can't handle it. And there's a lot of guys you see on pads that are incredible. These guys could whip pads, kicks, punches, one of the most beautiful display of technique on pads. You put them in the ring, they just don't have it mentally. Too much anxiety, too much stress. They just can't handle that pressure. So that's one of the biggest parts, is having that confidence in yourself and that mindset.
I wanted to go back to what we were talking about with strength and conditioning, where, like I said, there's a philosophy that many are taking in MMA, that the strength and conditioning is more important during fight camp than actual fight training itself. This is about MMA, though. Do you think that maybe the physical requirements of fighting 5-minute rounds and, a lot of the grappling and clinching, which is just unbelievably grueling on your body, do you think that there's different physical requirements in that sport maybe than kickboxing?
I think it's just different, right? It's just different. You need that different. If I were to roll 1 minute in jiu-jitsu, I'd probably be gassed out. Like, I wrestle around sometimes just as a joke and stuff. The father of my niece and nephew is one of the pioneers in Canada of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I don't know, Richard Monkey Nanku. And he's just been around it my whole life. If I roll for 1 minute, I'm gassed. I can't do it. But if they kickbox with me for 1 minute, they can't handle it either, right?
So it's just what you prepare for.
Or if you're that marathon runner and you try to swim 5 lanes in the pool, you're done. It's totally different energy systems. But I have to say, MMA is different demands on the body. It's a totally different demand on the body. You need to be able to wrestle and then stand up and be explosive, which is really difficult to do.
Do you foresee yourself getting involved any more deeply in MMA? Like training
I would love
fighters?
to. I would love to. I'm just waiting for a guy. I'm not that guy that's going to really go out there, and this is George St. Pierre, obviously, but I'm hoping to one day, obviously, build a good, group of guys who are fighting in the UFC.
So
I would love to have that.
That's the ultimate goal, is to be able to impart your knowledge on some young guys that are coming up.
For sure. And especially at the gym now, I've been loving it. And I'm seeing a lot of those UFC guys now are hopefully seeing all these videos and these drills that I'm posting and what I can have to offer. And it'd be good. There's so many times I watch the UFC. I'm like, if this guy had a little bit of, me coaching him, and I'm sure they have great coaches, but, they just need that little extra.
I know what you're saying. And I think this is also such a cool time for fighters to be able to hear these words from guys like you and to be able to easily access those videos that you're putting up and all these striking breakdowns that guys like Lawrence Kenshin are putting up and all these other people. I mean, it's an amazing time as far as the amount of information that you can get for fighters.
And people have to use it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of pride too, right? It's tough sometimes. Like even with a lot of the fighters that I approach and I give tips to, when you're at a higher level, you think you know everything. And that's kind of like you said, George was very humble that way where he can kind of allow and accept knowledge. I think that's important. A lot of guys can't. They think they know everything, and that's a terrible mindset.
I think you're totally right. And I think that there's no way, like what you were saying about if you wanted to be a very good MMA fighter, there's no way you're going to be the best at everything. It's impossible. So when you got a guy like George, one of the beautiful things about him was that he was aware of where his limitations lie. He was aware of where his strengths were, and he knew how to put it all together. I always talk about fighting as if like it's a language, because I think that a lot of people know how to use words. A lot of people know what the words are, but can you string them together eloquently? Yeah. And that's one of the things that I see, like when I'm watching that fight with Mehdi Baghdad, when you're throwing that combination left hook to the body, low kick. It's like it's a beautiful flowing sentence in a lot of ways. You're expressing yourself in that.
That's a good way of putting it, because I was talking to someone, I think it was Matt Embry today. I did fighter interviews before I came, so a lot of their things they were saying are fresh in my mind. But he was saying it's like, it's human nature. Everyone knows what fighting is. You can really watch two guys, and now you can say who's winning, who did more damage. You can see it. So it's like looking at the words on the page. But once you know how to read, it becomes a totally different game. It's not just words on a page anymore.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, man. It really is. Fighting is like nothing else. I mean, it's so heartbreaking when you see someone get devastated and smashed like BJ Penn did against Yair Rodriguez, but on the other hand, so beautiful when you see what Yair was able to do to a legend like BJ Penn. I mean, it's such a fighting in all forms, whether it's boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, MMA. It's to me one of the most engaging things for someone to watch.
Would you want to fight in the UFC if you could?
No. First of all, I'm old as fuck.
But in your prime?
If I was competing still when the UFC was around, I probably would have done something. But also, when the UFC first came around, it was like one weight class. Yeah. When I stopped fighting was in 1989. That was the last kickboxing fight that I had. And that was, there was nothing, and there was no money in it. And I was getting headaches, too, just from sparring. Yeah. And I did not spar smart. I sparred meathead style. Yeah. And, I know a lot more today than I ever did then as far as, like, consequences and what's important and how to learn better, which I think is knowing how to be. I was good at being obsessed with things and really, like, just focusing on them constantly all the time, but it was more frantic and frenetic. It wasn't, like, calculated and intelligent.
It's like crashing in and learning.
Just being obsessed, just constantly training all the day. But I think that, one of the things that we're learning now is the right way to learn. Like you were saying, that so many fighters are overtrained, and that so many fighters spar too hard, and they, a lot of, like you're saying, people think that hitting the pads and getting tired is good work.
It's tough though, because when you have a fighter's mentality, you got to think it's easy to be outside, and I could say it because I've been in it. But when someone on the outside says, "Oh, these guys, they need to train harder, they need to keep doing more and more and more," and when you're fighting, you're like, "Shit, I got to fight in 3 weeks." You never think your conditioning is good enough.
Right.
You could train every day, all day, put your best effort, and you never you're gonna think your conditioning is good enough. You're going to be like the day before the fight, you've done everything possible in your training. You're going to go on and you're going to second guess your conditioning. You're going to wonder if you did enough. You're going to wonder, shit, I should have trained now. Why didn't my Sunday rest day? I should have been training. I should have been getting better. But really, you have to get in that mindset that, you don't need more all the time. And that's why guys are getting injured. They're putting their bodies, they're not letting themselves rest, and they're getting sick. I bet you if you go on in one of your UFC shows and you ask every fighter on that card who's sick, I bet you 50% would be sick with some sort of cold or infection or sinus infection. Most of those guys are probably sick because their immune system is crashed from not eating, constantly training, stress, not sleeping. Like, I bet you more than half are sick with something.
Absolutely. I'm sure. I was always sick before Taekwondo tournaments. And
sinuses for me. Every fight I had a sinus infection, and I was even smart about my training, and I still got sinus infections.
Did you monitor your heart rate? Did you wake up in the morning and check?
No, I never really did that.
It's one of the things Steve Maxwell told me. He said was very important to find out where you're at. He goes, when you're in shape, he goes, find out what your resting heart rate is, measure it in the morning, and if you wake up in the morning and it's 5 to 10 beats over what it normally is, take the day off. He's like, your body's fighting something off. Yeah. And you probably won't even think that, and you just got to push through. But when you push through in those...
Makes it worse.
That's when you break yourself down. It's that balance between being intelligent and being tough, being disciplined, but also being like calculated.
But that's where I think your team is very important. You have to have someone like, I had it in my camp, but if you look at for us and TriStar, we'll use that as an example. He monitors everything.
Yeah.
So he probably looks at George and says, you know, George, you're a little off today. Like from the way George comes in, he probably knows already. How's his mood? Is he angry right now? Is he cranky? Is he snappy with his words? Like what's he doing? You know, because you've been around the fighters so long that they're like, my coach would say, okay, it's time. Take the day off. I was like, no, I'm going to train now. He's like, take the day off. And then I'll take a day off. I come back and I'm beasting it in the gym the next day. Where I would have just continually beat down my body and never really recovered and got better.
Right. So like you would come in and you'd feel kind of flat. You'd be like, fuck this. I got to push through this.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's important to push through it. But other times when you know you're at that level, it's like, hey, you got to pull yourself back.
See, that's the crazy thing about fighting and training and learning.
But it fucks with your mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a... I mean, you might be able to do it and pull it off, and it might not be the right way, but it might be successful. And so you do it that way every time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had fighters tell me there's no such thing as overtraining. You know, I'm like, well, that's crazy because there's definitely...
Then you're not training hard enough.
Well, there's definitely such a thing as overtraining. You know, it's
There
like
is,
a
but
lot of guys have done it.
if you're constantly steady with your training, you're not training right.
Right.
You better be getting yourself to the point in your training. Everyone was asking me, I trained once a day. And
That's
usually
it?
once a day. And Saturdays I would train twice, but the morning was a strength training, and then the night was kickboxing.
Now, when you say strength training, like what did that involve?
Well, I would do my depending on the day, I would do a push day, a pull day, and a lower body day.
So lifting weights.
Lifting weights, yeah. Strength day was always lifting weights. And I used weight training. So, for example, I would kickbox like Monday and Tuesday, just once a day. But that hour-and-a-half session, I left everything. When I hit the bag, I couldn't hit 10 rounds of bag because after round 3, I'm gassed. I'm putting all my force, all my energy. I'm training for a 9-minute fight. I'm not training for a marathon. So you need to train the proper energy system in order to, you know, be the most successful. And that's kind of that anaerobic system of constantly pushing yourself, letting yourself recover, pushing yourself, letting yourself recover. If I'm constantly, that's why I never ran a day in my career.
You never ran?
Never ran a day in my career.
Wow.
I did not hit the road a day in my career.
Wow. That's shocking to a lot of people, me included.
Yeah. Everyone who hears it's like, you're nuts, you're crazy. I said, why? Give me one good reason why. I can give you one is if you need that time to reflect, if you need that time to mentally prepare yourself. But what does it do for you in the fight? Are you ever going to run 10K in a fight? No, it's a sprint.
Right.
Do you see sprinters like, you know, Usain Bolt, you know, take 10K runs every morning? He might do it to loosen up and stay relaxed, but there's other ways of doing it. You've mentioned it on your podcast, shadow boxing. Mm-hmm. Instead of going for a 10K run, shadow box for 20 minutes. You go into the ring and shadow box. Envision your opponent. I'm fighting Raymond Daniels. I'm going to pressure fight Raymond Daniels. So I'm going to shadow box for 20 minutes in the ring like I'm pressure fighting Raymond Daniels. I'm mentally focusing myself. I am using the right energy system because I can pick up my intensity as much as I want. If I just want to stay loose, I just won't punch. I might not even punch. I might just use my footwork within the ring to kind of just set my mind, set my feet. But there's so many different ways. You can skip. You can, you know, sometimes I do light training on the bag. I'll do some light rounds on different bags just to warm up my hands and my body and that kind of thing. But I never ran. Too much damage. You're running, shin splints, the damage on your joints. And it didn't hit the energy system you hit in fighting. So why do it?
That's really interesting because you always had a very high work output in your fights, and you had very good endurance in your fights, too.
Everyone thought there was a secret. I said, I trained hard. In an hour and a half, I trained hard. When I hit the bag, I hit the bag. I wasn't looking around at the time, looking at how much time's left on the clock. I hit the bag. If I knew I was working something technical or drilling, it's different.
Right.
But when it's time to work, you got to put the work in. You got to be able to cut out all those distractions that you have. And it doesn't matter what you have to do after. It doesn't matter what's going on in your day. If your girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with you or whatever the frick it is, you got to be focused. And you have an hour and a half to do it.
Now, when you see MMA fighters that are putting in 2 a days on a regular, sometimes 3, what do you think of that?
I think it's okay if you're doing it right. I mean, MMA, there's more things happening, right? So if you're doing a roll in the morning, you know, it's okay, but you're not going to go the hardest rolling you have and then hit the hardest strength and conditioning you have and then at night do your hardest kickboxing session. There's no way the next day you're actually putting 100% of your energy in those sessions. So maybe sometimes if they're doing 3 sessions, they might put 60% in each session. You're never really hitting that last 40%, which is probably the place you want to be. You want to be in that place where you're not comfortable. You want to be in that place where you're tired, because that's what fighting is, getting yourselves to that point. You want to throw up if you have to, you know. It's they say it's your mind gives up before the body does. So when you're tired and you're starting to feel all that lactic acid and you shut down, they say it's your brain shutting down first and you have some time to keep going. So you got to prepare your mind to be able to withstand that. If you're hitting bag for 10 rounds and you're looking around and you're fucking around, like, what are you accomplishing that? Unless you're working on technique or warm up, but everything has to have a purpose. I don't believe in doing something that doesn't have a purpose.
Well, that's one of the things that I really like about the way you drill, and one of the things I like about the way you shadow box is that you do everything like you're in a fight.
Yeah.
Everything, guard is high, stance is perfect, footwork is perfect. When you say that you lift weights, like what kind of weightlifting were you doing once a week?
It's the basics, but the most effective. So I always squatted. Squatting is very important.
Why do you think squatting is so important?
Lower body. When everything in athletic movements comes from the lower body. You have to have strong hips. You know, your glutes got to be firing at a level. And, you know, when you punch, when you kick, everything comes from your lower body. And that's what people don't understand.
So were you squatting heavy? Were you squatting light weights, high reps?
Depends what phase I'm in. If I was in hypertrophy phase, I was probably doing 10 sets of 10 on a lower weight. As I was in power strength phase, I was doing 5 sets of 5. As I was more of the explosive phase, I would do more of like 5 sets of 3. And then I'd maybe superset it with an explosive jump or a standing long jump or a skater style movement. But I'd always use it. I'd add sprints. There's one times where I would do, 5 heavy explosive squats, and then I would line up on the track right after my set, and I would do like 10-yard sprints just to work that explosiveness. So that whole point of getting strength into explosiveness.
So that kind of running you believed in?
Well, just that little bit.
Right, but not
too much. That would be like once or
right.
twice in a camp.
Right.
Otherwise, I know my central nervous system was going to shut down.
No shit. Once or twice in a camp, huh?
I wouldn't do it very often. Even that sled run, you know how all the guys are doing the prowler, pulls, and sleds? If I did that, I'd be out of commission for a week because my body would just take a beating, and then I wouldn't be able to function and do what I really had to do, which was kickbox the next day. Right. So it had to have a purpose. I would do it as a mental test for myself. I would do it as, my weight's not coming off right now. I'm holding a lot of water. Let's run the sleds. I used it as that more than just constantly. If you're running the prowler every day, your nervous system's taking a freaking beating.
Right. Now, what about nutrition? Like, what did you eat, and how did you
nutrition? I was a little
diet?
bit. I wasn't super calculated as people are today with counting their macros and micros, and that's too complicated. And I don't believe in overcomplicating things. I love the basics. I believe in the basics. So I never overcomplicated things. I knew what good carbs and bad carbs were. I knew good timing when to eat. I knew what things I should be eating when, but I never really counted how many calories I was eating in my day. I just knew through experience.
Wow.
It just came through experience and practicing and playing around with my body. There's no cookie cutter, approach to it.
So, like, what would a typical meal be like for dinner?
It would always be a balanced meal. Have a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbs, and some vegetable. There's always has the 3. At first, what I was doing when I first started fighting, I was like, carbs make you fat. Carbs make you fat. And like everyone thinks, everyone wants to diet. The first thing they think they have to do is cut their carbs out. But now there's all this new research about fats and how important is intermittent fasting and how important it is to keep high fats in your diet. So a lot of guys are doing the avocados and coconut oils to kind of get that fat. But I just like the balanced meal. I'd rather lower my protein and have a good carbohydrate, which is my first line of energy. So I would eat a lot of sweet potatoes, quinoas, baked potatoes sometimes.
Did you supplement with vitamins?
Not much. Omega-3s, usually. That's about it. I take an electrolyte after training. That's about it. Nothing crazy.
Now, what about, did you do anything for, go ahead.
So I was going to say, but I wasn't the guy that, if I knew I had a fight, I cut weight from 8 weeks out. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to just eat like shit and then I'll deal with it. No,
Right.
8 weeks out, my diet started with my camp.
Right, so you're trying to lower your body fat
I only
first.
want to lose 2 pounds a week. Anything
Right.
more than 2 pounds a week becomes unhealthy.
Right.
So I'd get to about 10 to 12 pounds the week before my fight. And that was it. Once I was there, that last week was all water.
And did you do any like deep tissue massage or any ice baths or anything like that
I did
for
a little
recovery?
bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it, but not. It wasn't a big focus. I did a lot of rolling out, stretching, that kind of thing. But I liked Epsom salt baths. Those
Yeah,
are
that's
one of my
great. I
things.
love that. Some people are obsessed with deep tissue, though. I know guys
I
that
like
get
it.
deep tissue massage every day after training.
And you've done that. Was it the cryo? How do you say it?
Cryotherapy?
Cryotherapy?
Yeah, that's intense.
You like it?
Love it. You
'Cause I
never done
think-
it?
No, I haven't done it yet.
You want to do it?
I'll do it.
Let's do it today. I'll take you.
Done.
All right.
I've never done it.
Oh, you'll love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll freak you out.
Is
it's
this
cold
scary?
as fuck.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't believe how cold it is. You're like, how the fuck is this?
I was like,
really
I gotta
this
try
cold?
it. I gotta try it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I never really.
250 degrees below zero.
Yeah. And
You're
how long are you
standing
in there for? Like 10
3
seconds?
minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, you'll do a minute and a half. They won't let you go more than a minute and a half for the first time.
What?
But-
Because I'm trying to say I'm soft or
No,
what?
no, for anyone.
I know.
It's just the rule. The second time you'll do it, they'll let
How
you
long
do
do you
3
go in
minutes.
for?
3 minutes. I've done 340. That's the longest I've ever done. Those last 40 minutes.
Is it 3 minutes of hell or is it 3 minutes of?
It's not fun.
Yeah.
It's Jamie's done it.
You've done it?
What's it like, Jamie? Describe it.
It's not really claustrophobic isn't the word, because there's kinds you can get in that your head's above. Like you
Yeah,
can
I'm
still
cla-
breathe and you can still talk to
But
people.
this kind is not like that.
Your
the kind that
head's
we
in
go
there?
to. Yeah, you're in a meat locker essentially, where the liquid nitrogen cools the oxygen. It's not. You know, that woman that died in Vegas. Do you know that story?
No.
Well, she said it herself, and apparently she was kind of short, and her mouth was below the outer lip, and so she was breathing in the liquid nitrogen, and you can't. That's like getting choked out. You have no oxygen,
Yeah.
so she just fell asleep, and she froze to death.
man.
And they found her the next day, frozen solid. See, this is the kind
I
that
always
they
see the
have.
heads out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the kind that most people do, where your head is out and your body's freezing, but
But look how much fun she's having there.
she's having a great
She's
time.
having a blast in there.
She's doing an ad. The kind I do, if you go to Cryo Healthcare, Jamie, the kind we do, you have to wear a mask. You wear like a surgeon's
intense.
mask over your face. You wear earmuffs. You wear gloves, and you wear
Like slippers style.
Yeah, you wear socks, and then you wear like rubber Crocs, and you step in there, and you're inside a chamber. Let's see if they have some images, so you can see what it looks
Have
like.
you done that sensory deprivation stuff?
I have one in my basement.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love it. I do that all the time.
Now-
That's giant.
If you're claustrophobic, good or bad? Someone says
Oh,
you don't
it's-
even think about it.
It's not the best thing for people who are claustrophobic, but claustrophobia is psychological. See, that's
All
where it is. See how
psychological.
these guys are. That's how they're dressed, and the earmuffs and the face masks. And so you go in that one chamber that's on the right. That's where you take off the robe, and then you step into the one on the left, and that one is the one where you freeze your dick off. And so you'll do in a little bit. We're gonna take you over there. You do about a minute and a
Nice.
half in there. It's
I
awesome.
love to, man.
So
So I just want to know about it because people keep asking me.
It's great. Well, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who's actually on tomorrow, who's a huge proponent of both sauna and cold shock therapy, and she believes that heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins, like that you get from sauna
Okay.
and you get from cryotherapy, they provide your body with some incredible anti-inflammatory responses. And your body, essentially, when you go to a sauna, your body's freaking out. Your body's
Yeah.
like, what in the fuck? It's so hot. But if you do it in a controlled environment for a certain amount of time, your body produces these heat shock proteins that are really beneficial for you. And so she believes in the sauna. Like there was a study that she was talking about where the sauna showed a 50% drop in mortality across the board from all things, whether it's from cancer, disease, all these different things. Like the people who regularly did sauna had such a healthy response to that sauna, and having those inflammatory markers reduced in the blood. There it is. Using the sauna 4 to 7 times per week associated with, it's 40%. 40% lower all-cause mortality.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I was reading something. Tim Ferriss, He has a book now called Tools of the Titans. And I guess he has his own podcast, or someone just
very good
got
podcast.
the book from me. And he basically talks to all the top people or in their field. And so he wrote a list of like all the tips that these people suggested. And a lot of them was on sauna and baths, and it never really got into too much of the science behind it. But these, people in this field are saying sauna 3 times a week is probably one of the best things you can do for yourself.
Yeah, what she was writing there, HSP, that's what she's talking about, heat shock proteins. And I bet you could probably reproduce that with a hot bath. That's what HSP. Cytokines too. That's also what you're getting from cryotherapy. You're getting these anti-inflammatory responses. And I think you probably could get it from hot yoga too, because hot yoga, you get so fucking hot in there.
Do you do hot yoga?
I love it.
I did it, and I took a little break, but I'm starting again.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing for flexibility too.
But the class I was in was an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that shit was long.
It's long. It sucks.
Yeah.
The last 15 minutes are bullshit.
And the last one, you literally sit up, lay down or something. I sit up there and I'm like, oh, shit, I'm dying, man.
Yeah, it's brutal. You definitely get used to it, though. But, I see, like, girls that go to my place that'll take 2 classes in a row, so I feel like such a pussy.
Yeah, seriously.
They're in there for 3 hours.
I'm sitting there struggling, falling. There's an old lady beside me killing it. I have to use the little foam blocks to even sit down, and everyone's just laughing. You can see all the mirrors too, and the mirrors make it worse, man. Everyone's feel the whole place is staring at me.
Well, especially they're looking at you, this fucking muscular stud.
Oh, yeah.
And you're next to a 60-year-old lady who's got her foot above her head.
That's funny. I went with when I was with my ex-girlfriend. So a lot of the old ladies would go, "Is that your boyfriend? They're so cute for trying," because I was trying my ass up. Because I'm an athlete, man. I'm like, I'm not letting this old lady be able to do this shit, and I'm standing here struggling. Are you crazy?
But it's like you were talking about before. If you took a marathon runner and then put him in a pool, they would be dying.
But still, you're an athlete, man. You're gonna try, man.
Of course,
you're gonna
competitive guy like you.
I'm sweating extra from trying so hard. Yeah, it was tough, but I love it, man.
You know what I feel from yoga, and especially from the last year where I've been really consistent with it, is that I feel like there's a lot of things that are really good for your body. I think lifting weights is good for your body if you do it correctly. I think martial arts, all sorts of training is good for your body. But I feel like what yoga does for your balance and for all the things that connect, like for your joints and your spine, I've never done anything where I can feel my back pop loose, like pop. Like there's things you do in yoga where you bend down and you reach behind your heels and you tuck your hands under your heels, and then you straighten your legs out with your body flat, and so you're pulling your body apart with your legs, like you're literally pulling your spine apart. You hear it go thunk 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 thunk.
Oh yeah,
it's so good for you, and you leave like my back. It's always like from all the years of jiu-jitsu, there's always like a pain. There's always like something
nagging.
Yeah, it's always something. But yoga eliminates almost all that shit.
Because even when I was doing it, like I realized how much scar tissue and shit that have developed in my joints. Like even if my arm, like I can't fully straighten my left arm, and there's the one where you have to kind of put your pinkies together and lay on your arms.
Yeah.
And that really helps stretch it out. And I'm like, oh, this stuff's not good. And then I'm sitting on the couch at home, and like I'm sitting in positions where I was like, my legs are crossed all funny. I'm like, I can't even cross my legs, and here I am, like in like a Mahatma Gandhi here with my legs super folded in half. I was like, this is crazy, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Since then, I wasn't consistent with it, but I said I'm going to be a yoga practitioner for life.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's great for mobility. And for people that just want to be healthier, it's for just the ability to use and move your body. I think it's amazing.
The problem with guys is that negative stereotype. Oh, it's so gay to do yoga.
Yeah.
Do it, man. Try it.
Yeah. I know. It's weird that it has that stereotype. I don't know why.
It's so stupid, but it's incredible. I'm loving it.
It's one of the more underestimated things in terms of its difficulty factor. It's just very underestimated.
Yeah. Do you think MMA fighters should be doing it?
I think what you were saying about you can only do so many things is very important, which I think one of the reasons why your philosophy about only working out one time a day, no running, obviously it worked out great. You had amazing success as a fighter. And obviously your endurance was spectacular. Your output was spectacular. I mean, you were an aggressive pressure fighter. So when you say that you had this sort of measured approach to training, I think it's very interesting. Some of the times I've gotten my ass kicked the most in jiu-jitsu was after I took yoga. I took yoga in the morning, and then I went to train at night and just got fucking choked.
They say you have to give some time off from
Yeah.
training or something because your body is so loose. The other thing is they say you don't want to overstretch your muscle because then you take it out of that optimal range to fire. So I don't know if you really overstretch things.
I don't know if that's true. I know what you're saying. I know they say that as,
Like
in
if your
terms of like
hamstrings are too
stretching
flexible,
before.
or I'm like,
So I don't think that necessarily makes sense. I think where it makes sense is you shouldn't stretch out before you do explosive things. They used to think you should. Now
Yeah.
they think you should warm up and get your body sweaty and loose, but that in actual stretching, well, you really stretch something out, you actually lessen the amount of power that you can generate
get
with
from
those
it.
muscles.
Yeah.
But I always feel like full mobility, I mean, outside of that, I think that's where the argument is, and I think it's obviously correct because there's been research to back it up. But I don't think there's any research that shows that like being able to do a full split in any way will take away your kicking power,
Yeah.
right? I mean, think about the amount of power that a lot of these guys can generate that are really flexible. I think if there's any, there might be a trade-off, like maybe it makes you a little less powerful but a little more mobile, and then you can generate more power and build more power up and still keep that mobility. That would be optimum. But I think there's probably a middle ground there that you need to reach.
Yeah. What do you think of? I know George St. Pierre came and made gymnastics popular.
Yeah.
And then Conor McGregor with that movement.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that movement?
I think footwork is critical in MMA. I think it's really important to be able to get out of the way and move in as fast as possible. And it's one of the things that Conor is spectacular at. Conor is so good at sliding back, pop, and coming in. And he's also, there's also a totally different philosophy that's a part of striking with those little tiny gloves. It's much more difficult to put yourself up in a shell. I mean, the way you would fight was so fucking classic. I really, I'm not kissing your ass anymore. This is it. This is the last time. But I really loved how you were so solid, rock solid with your defense and your fundamentals. Chin tucked, gloves up high, and it was very hard to get through that. That doesn't necessarily work the same way in MMA because guys can sneak punches through.
It's
and they
a little
can sneak
harder.
punches around.
But I
Yeah.
still think you have to have that as a base.
I think you're right.
No matter what, you're going to get in fight exchanges. And there's a lot of guys who are good at closing distance. So it's better to at least, hey, I'm going to leave and exit with my hands up rather than leave and exiting with my hands low.
100%.
So
I couldn't agree
it's-
more.
And again, the way I throw it, and I can still make it work in MMA because one of the tricks that I teach my MMA guys is instead of keeping that front arm pinned, you keep it up here. So it covers the center.
So you're lifting your front elbow
and
a little
kind of
higher?
tucking it in. So this way, your elbow now covers the center line.
Right. I see
So
what you're
now
saying.
it's harder for straight punches. And you got to think, you give me a straight punch and I put my elbow in front to block the center line. If you punch your two knuckles on an MMA glove on my elbow,
You're
good
gonna break
luck.
your hand. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can really manipulate that front elbow to be able to kind of use that defense and kind of make it work. But again, I still believe in movement.
That
If
is
I-
another issue in MMA too, is breaking hands.
Yeah.
A lot of guys break hands with those little gloves.
But when you did old school martial arts, how did you train your hands?
Well, you know
Was
what,
it that
man? There's a
old
lot of
and,
guys. My friend John was a nut about this. My friend John Lee, who was a U.S. national Taekwondo champion, he used to punch bricks, and he had one knuckle. Like his two knuckles had forged into this one giant callous knuckle. Like, have you seen those old like Masoyama guys? You know, those
just
old school
one, but you don't even see a knuckle anymore.
Yeah, but then I heard like that shit's super bad as you get older. Like you get
arthritis
massive
and-
arthritis, and you can't write your own name anymore. So
I played around with doing some bag work with no gloves on. I keep my wraps on sometimes, mostly just to avoid the scraping and the cutting, but I'll hit the bags with no gloves on. And I'll literally hit my hand on different angles. For example, I'll sit there and I'll hit the side, I'll back fist it. You need that like I said earlier in the podcast, you need to strengthen everything.
Yeah.
You need to strengthen all those little parts. And that's why one of my last Instagram videos, I said, add weighted, just a 1 pound or a 2 pound dumbbell to your shadow boxing. Because again, you're working those little joints you might not necessarily work. Like if you have those dumbbells and you rotate your hands in a circle, you're going to feel your elbow work at different movements in different ways that help strengthen the joints. So those little minor things add up at the end.
I'm sure. Did you ever squeeze like hand grippers or anything like that?
Not really with that.
A lot of guys are into that too. And I've gotten more into that lately. This is
That was
company,
old school.
Yeah,
That
but
was
there's a company called Captains of Crush. They make ones that are like 197 pounds to squeeze. They make them up to, I think they go even heavier than that. But I have ones at home that are 140, 160. I keep them in my car and just fucking, especially for
But
grip
your
strength.
jiu-jitsu, though, that develops naturally.
Yes, it does develop naturally, but that accentuates it. Definitely accentuates it. And hanging from your hands, like from a chin-up bar.
You know what? My jiu-jitsu guy at my gym loves it. He's like, man, you got to hang. And we're like, buddy, get out of here. He's literally hanging. And I was like, he says what it's done for his joints has been incredible.
Yeah, that was another
fixed his shoulder issue.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's another Steve Maxwell thing he brought up on this podcast about being able to loosen the shoulders up and alleviate a lot of the impingements through hanging. And people who are interested in this, they're listening. They have, if you have a shoulder injury, there's a bunch of videos of it online while they explain it. Another thing that I got into recently was bottoms up kettlebells. This is a kettlebell here, and when most of the time you hold a kettlebell, you would hold it like this.
Okay.
Well, when you hold it the other way, you hold it like this.
You really have to strengthen.
Yeah, you're developing like real stability in your shoulders that you don't ordinarily.
It's more like a stability. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it's not like it's hard to hold it up. It's not the weight itself, not that hard to lift. Because this Ironman kettlebell is only 40 pounds.
I was actually talking about those today.
They're dope, right?
Whitney Miller.
Yeah.
She's with Glory now, right?
Yes, yeah,
She's
yeah,
the backstage. She was telling us about it. Yeah, she was telling me you guys are friends.
Yeah, I love these things. But bottoms up kettlebells doesn't have to be an Ironman, any kind. It's very weird how hard it is to balance it in place. And
it's probably like the yoga,
for stability.
Right?
Yeah.
Some of those poses when you're on your ball of your foot balancing on one leg.
Yeah.
The strongest bodybuilder in the world, not a chance.
What I was shocked with was how my feet would hurt.
Yeah.
When I first started getting into yoga, I'm like, God, my feet are fucking killing me. Like when you would do the standing bow pose, my feet would be shaking.
Yeah.
I was like, it's so weird. It's such a weird little muscles that you don't think. You got to think, well, God, I've been kicking things forever. My feet have to be strong. Nope.
So back to that movement. Do you like that movement stuff?
Yes, I do and I don't. But it's like what I was saying about yoga. Like, I think you made a really good point. Like, you can't do everything. And you probably wind up doing too much.
And you want to.
Yeah. But I think that there's something to the ability to move your body. And it's one of the things that Eddie Bravo's brought up many times. What we have seen over the last few years is break dancers who have gotten into MMA or gotten into jiu-jitsu, rather. And they're fucking phenomenal. I mean, two of Eddie's best students, Richie Martinez and Gio Martinez, are fucking break dancers. So these guys are ridiculously their dexterity is ridiculous. So they can like stand on one hand and have the other hand up in the air, and their feet are up, and they spin. They can spin on their head, and
crazy,
unbelievable ability to move their bodies, and that translates directly into grappling. And they learn so quick. Like, I had heard about these guys when they were just starting. He's like, dude, these guys, they've been doing jiu-jitsu for 3 months. They're fucking choking everybody. I'm like, that's crazy. He's like, I'm telling you, it's like, just makes sense. They can move their body in a way that you can't move your body. And I think there's mobility and the ability to effectively manipulate your body in a way that's alien to other people, I think has significant advantages. And I think that comes from what that Ido Portal guy is doing. And I think that comes from yoga. I think that comes from a lot of these break dancers. But it's a matter of, like, how much time do you spend doing that? And is it something that you start doing when you're 28, when you're already a professional fighter as a world champion? Or is it something you need to do when you're 15 and you're a crazy kid fucking around in high school and you get really good at it and then you translate that ability to move your body directly into martial arts?
See, I look now, and as a 31-year-old, I look back now and I say, what would I have done if I knew I was going to end up as a professional fighter? What would I have done from a young age in order for me to improve to where I was? I want to hear your take on it. So what would you do as a kid? I'll give you an example. One of my things, I would have done gymnastics from a young age.
Great thing to say.
And my other one, dancing.
It's a great thing too, yeah. That's a great thing. That's why I think Chris Brown's going to fuck up Soulja Boy. Told you. Yeah, I think the ability to move your body, the ability to move it really well. I mean, I noticed that going from Taekwondo to Jiu-Jitsu that I had great balance.
Transferable skills.
Yeah, you're used to standing on one leg all the time, so your ability to maintain that position is much better than someone who's not. And I noticed that even translating directly into yoga. But I think it depends on what kind of fighting you're trying to do. Like if I wanted to get into MMA, one of the things that I tell people is that wrestling is probably the most important skill. The ability to
In
dictate,
MMA.
the ability
For
to
sure.
dictate where the fight takes place.
I agree.
And that was a gigantic key to the success of Georges St. Pierre and the success of many, many fighters. And also the success of many strikers is their defensive wrestling, their ability to keep the fight standing. So if you have the ability to take a guy down and you have the ability to make sure he doesn't take you down, then you can better dictate where the fight takes place. So I think it's also a skill that's really that translates so incredibly well when you learn it early in life. But striking is the scariest shit. And striking is also something that I think there's a diminished effectiveness in learning as you get older. There's something about, like, I've seen people that didn't start doing jiu-jitsu until they're 30 and they developed
And they do
elite
well.
black belt skills. It's
How's
very,
Russell Peters, by the way?
Russell's great.
Is he good? Is he good at jiu-jitsu? Is he
He's-
just starting?
He eats too much. He drinks too much. He's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I saw that
love
picture.
Russell.
It's awesome.
Yeah, man, he's training. We train. You
Yeah.
know, he gets after it, man. He gets tired. I love him. I love that guy to death. But back to the question about it depends on what you would want to do.
So with
you wanna be a
striking, then you were
kickboxer?
saying.
Striking, I think footwork and movement. I think the ability to get in and out. You know, like when you look at guys who are really good at not being there when their opponent attacks. When you look at like the guys who have fantastic footwork and. I think maybe if you want to be a striker, I think really just working. I think what you're saying about your training regimen, that you would essentially you're not running, you're not doing all these different things. You're focusing entirely on what you will do in an actual fight. So maybe you didn't do anything wrong. Maybe you did it perfect.
That's it. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
It works, man. I don't know. I just think, like you said, people are doing way too much, and that's the problem.
Yeah,
And they're not. Things have to have a purpose. Like my strength training, there's all these new tools and these new fun things. Like, hey, let's do this crazy exercise where I'm doing a deadlift into a squat into some shoulder press. Why don't you deadlift? Do it well, and then why don't you squat? Do it well, and then why don't you shoulder press and do it well in a safe, proper manner? It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And I think people are trying to overcomplicate, and that's what kind of takes away from their success, is overcomplicating things.
And wouldn't you also agree that it depends entirely upon the kind of body that a person was born with? Like some
Absolutely.
people,
Genetics is huge.
yeah, it's giant, and it's sort of like the inescapable factor. If someone has genetic advantages, you know, they just win.
Like they even say, like power hitting. I don't know. You can teach someone to hit harder, but there's just those naturally guys who can just knock you out from day one.
Yeah,
just
like,
a natural hitting ability.
you can't teach someone to hit like George Foreman.
No.
You just-
No way.
It is what it is.
No matter how much you turn your shoulder and you put your hip into it, you're not hitting it.
Isn't
like
it crazy too that you can't tell by looking at someone? Like there's some people you would look at them and they don't look like a big puncher, but they were murderous.
that? Yeah. It's, you know what it is? A lot of those tall guys, they have that stiffness in that. It's like a stiff power that's really tough sometimes. It's like a stiff power, but it hurts.
Well, it's a mechanical advantage, you know, that leverage, which also translates to jiu-jitsu. It's a giant advantage in jiu-jitsu to have long limbs.
It's tough. Like back to a long point from before, but I became my best as a martial artist with color commentary. You have to know everything. You have to be able to. You have to watch a fight, and you have to be able to assess instantly what's going on, how they're doing it. You got to do it on the fly. You don't have time, right? So you have to be able to pick things up quickly. And now I'm at the point where I can look at someone as soon as they get into their stance. I'll be like, okay, you got to do this, 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 and this.
Well, it's funny too when you can tell like when a guy's going to kick.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
oh, here comes a right kick. You just see it. You see that back heel come up. You see him leaning a little bit, or especially when the guy's going to spin. That's the big giveaway.
Oh,
You
yeah,
see
the-
that left hip turn a little. You see this-
Instep, slightly step
yeah,
out.
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it.
How do you think, would you be a good coach?
If I was invested in it, I would be the best coach that I could be, for sure.
Like, do you
and
think,
that's one of
like,
the reasons
you
why I
would
stopped
be-
teaching. I stopped
Okay.
teaching when I started doing stand-up comedy because I wasn't being a very good teacher anymore.
Just because you didn't put the time and the effort into it?
It
or-
wasn't where my head was at. My head was I was, you know, there was no, like I said, there was no money in fighting when I was fighting. There was nothing. And so unless you were a boxer, you weren't going to make any money.
So that was before Fear Factor?
Yeah, way before. So there was essentially no way to have a career other than teaching. And so when I started getting into stand-up comedy, I realized like I got talked into it by guys I used to train with. And when I started doing it, I realized like, oh wow, like I could make a living doing this. Like this is actually, there's a real path. Like there's guys that I know that make a living doing this, where everybody I know that's fighting is broke or they're slurring their words.
Yeah.
And like guys from the gym that would be in gym wars all the time, and now they're all fucked up. They don't know where they parked their car. There was a lot of that shit that was scaring the fuck out of me. So when I started getting into comedy, I quit teaching. And I suffered financially because of it, but I would rather do that at the time. My mind was, I would rather suffer financially than give anybody a half-assed coaching job.
Yeah.
You know, so coaching MMA, I think, is one of the most difficult things in all sports. You know, I'm sure coaching kickboxing is probably very similar in that regard, in that you're so invested in your students. There's so much on the line.
You have to be.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so, you know, there's nothing you can do. You can train them as much as you can, but you got to let them go when they get into that ring or get into that cage, and like, you know, and hope that it all comes together.
But the other problem I find with MMA is a lot of coaches. There's too many coaches, I find. You have a lot of these guys have a boxing coach that's telling them to box a certain way. Then all of a sudden they're going, hey, I got to do Muay Thai now. So they have a Muay Thai coach is now telling them to do Muay Thai this way. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, hey, we got to do spinning shit. So let's do it here. So now all of a sudden you have 3 different coaches all telling you to do different things.
Yeah.
So now this poor fighter is going to go to the ring. Yeah, you might know everything from all of them, but what are you going to do? You're going to get confused. That's where, again, basics are important. That's why I don't think you should overcomplicate shit. So I know if you're going to jab, I know how I'm going to do it. I don't have time to sit there and be like, okay, I know I can parry. I know I can slip. I know I can time with the low kick. You have to know.
Right.
And I think with too many coaches are complicating shit for these guys, where they think they have to hit all of these things. So they're going to all these different coaches, and it's way overcomplicated. So who do you listen to? How do you listen to? Which way is the right way? Which one is the wrong way? My boxing coach is telling me to turn my heel out. My kickboxing coach is telling me to keep my front foot pointing forward. Which is the right way?
It's a good point, and I think that's where guys like Matt Hume, guys like Faraz Sahabi, that's why they're so important, because they're overall MMA coaches. And also I think what's really important about guys like Matt and Faraz is that both of those guys are highly accomplished martial artists in all disciplines. So they really know how to put it all together. Like Faraz is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, he's an outstanding striker, so he knows how to combine all those things together. I think that's so critical.
Greg Jackson was probably the same way.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, there's maybe a dozen of them on the planet, and that's a problem. If you're not near any of those and you start out with someone and then that coach becomes like a mentor figure to you, and then you realize, oh, my coach is kind of limited in a lot of ways. It's very difficult to separate yourself from someone.
It's hard to see that.
Yes.
And it's kind of, you can't be a fighter who you put all your trust into this man to help you out, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, he's lacking things.
Yeah.
Like I remember with Mitch Gagnon, he came to me and he was like, he had a guy working with him all the time, and I was just kind of like, I go to his friend who asked me to help him with his striking. I was like, man, I don't know if I can help this guy. He's just so bad technically at this point, where I'm like, it's a lot of work I have to do to kind of fix and clean things up, and that's my way. But he was so good at just being a beast and not caring that he was successful. But when I showed him my way of putting things, he's like, oh, I wish I learned this earlier.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I had this. And then there was kind of, sometimes you can kind of get angry about it, man. Why did I waste like so many years with this guy if this is the way it should have been done from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, obviously people are limited geographically as far as like having a good coach near them, but I urge anybody listening to this to put the research in before you join a gym. It's so much harder to unlearn something than it is to learn it.
Yeah.
So when you have, like, one of the things that I would deal with in teaching Taekwondo is guys who came from other martial arts that didn't know how to do certain things correctly. Like their knees would be down. They didn't lift the knee above the hip. They didn't get real power into anything. Yeah. They had never worked with a kicking bag. They never worked with a heavy bag. They had just done stuff in the air. And so they didn't have any power. And so you'd have to try to reteach them. And like they when they would get tired, it'd be the same thing. Foot up, knee down, everything be all screwed up. And you're like, no, you got to go, even when you're tired, you got to stick to the proper technique. And you would fall into what you learned first.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. And you always want to trust that person because you can't. You have to. And that's a lot of the fighters' confidence comes from their coach.
Yeah.
So you have to. But it's kind of hard.
It's very hard.
It's hard to find that balance.
And it's also you have to have a relationship with that coach where you like them.
Yeah.
That's hard too.
So if you were to have an MMA fight, where would you go?
Man.
Is that putting you on the spot?
No, but I think those guys that you talked
Or
about
who
right
you
there,
highly
Faraz
value.
Sahabi, Matt Hume, those two guys are, in my opinion, like cream of the crop. Duke Rufus.
Mhm.
You know, I think you would have to have someone also that sees what you do well and says, well, this is obviously your primary base. You're really good at this. So let's work on all these other aspects too. But we're not going to try to take this away from you and turn you into a wrestler.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're going to fight a
Work
real
with your
wrestler and get
yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah.
It's such a creative approach because you're creating a fighter. I mean, you take someone and you're putting all the tools together and you're helping mold them. But then it's also up to them too. It's up to them to be improvisational inside the ring or the octagon and to figure out how to put those things together. And everyone's got their own little style, their own approach, you know.
And again, a lot of the differences, like, I mean, just because I do something differently than someone else doesn't necessarily mean their way is the wrong way.
Right.
Of course, I'm going to believe my system is the best system and the way, but it's not to say it's the only way.
No, there's no only way.
And that's what I love. But
Yeah.
you have to be open to know that there's other ways. And that's where I've been touching around on. Have you read the Book of Five Rings?
Yes.
And he talks about you have to know your weaknesses. You have to
Yes.
know other arts in order to make your art and style the best.
That's Musashi.
Nice.
That's the tattoo.
I've been reading it. And
Yeah, it's
I can only
amazing.
read one page at a time. Because I'm like, shit, I got to sit there. I got to reflect on it. It's
Yeah.
deep, man.
Oh, he was a deep dude. I mean, he killed 60 people with swords.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One-on-one combat. Miyamoto Musashi, one of the greatest samurais ever. And during a weird phase in history, you know, he was a Ronin traveling around, just getting in sword fights.
Crazy.
and doing calligraphy and art.
Yeah.
He opened my mind to this idea that you have to be balanced in order to be effective in combat. You can't have any holes in your mental game. And one of the ways to not have holes in the mental game was that he would approach everything as like art. Everything you did, whether you were writing your name, whether you were, filling out a form, driving your car. Well, no cars back then, obviously,
Yeah.
but everything that you did, you would do with excellence. Yeah.
Well,
He was a
that's-
bad motherfucker.
Oh, for sure. I'm loving it, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's deep.
It's great.
And you talk about it and you look at it and you can look at yourself sometimes and be like, yeah, man, I'm the modern day of some of the stories he does. Like, I did that in a different way. You know, and I think that's really cool for me to see and read.
Yeah, because it translates. You know, this guy lived that life, and then
It was just a different time.
yeah, and then sat down and tried to relay the information that he had accumulated over this life of fucking people up with swords.
I have a random question. I'd ask you
Okay.
about fighting. True or false? Was it a real story that you wanted to fight Wesley Snipes?
It wasn't my idea. It was
Because I always wanted to know about that.
Yeah, that was
I
a
never
real
asked.
story. One of the original producers of the UFC, Campbell McLaren, who's
Okay.
a buddy of mine.
Yeah, I did a reality show with him.
What was it?
I did Combates Americas.
Oh, yeah.
I was a guest. I was a guest coach on it.
Well, they're still doing that show. They're still having fights. You know, he's still putting on fights.
It was cool because one of the guys that I was like a guest kickboxing coach on the show now fights with Glory, Daniel Morales.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome, man.
It
Yeah.
was a cool experience.
So he came to me with the idea because Wesley Snipes had tax problems.
Yeah.
That's what it was about. So yeah, we're gonna
So
do it.
you would have?
I was gonna. Yeah.
Would it have been a UFC sanction?
Yeah. Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Who knows?
Yeah.
You know.
That's why I asked earlier. I was like, should I ask him or not? I'm like, I gotta ask.
Well, he had a martial arts background. I know he did a lot of karate, and I know he was a good kicker. Like you could tell, like when you throw punches and kicks, that he knew how to execute techniques. But he'd never fought. You know, and he had no jiu-jitsu at all. Zero. And I was like, well, good luck.
Was he thinking about taking it?
He just took it. Well, I mean, we had lawyers. We had signed contracts, or we
That would've
had
been insane.
negotiated contracts.
Aren't you an unlockable character on the UFC game?
Lockable. Yeah, unlockable. Yeah. Yeah. Is that, yeah. Unlockable. That
That's
why does that
the
say
word?
wrong?
Yeah, you're a
Yeah,
secret
you can
character.
unlock me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a character. I don't know how. It's weird that you have to do some weird fucking thing to do it. You have to do that. What is it
It's
called?
the old Konami code.
Yeah.
It's like a well-known code.
Yeah.
In order to get you on the game?
Yeah, you could do that and you can unlock me. Yeah.
Do you fight as you?
No, I don't play
You
video
don't play?
games.
No, neither do I.
I have a problem with my brain. I can't get involved in games. I get too
Addicted
obsessed.
or- yeah.
I have an addictive personality, and I try to avoid all things that are negative or waste time that could be
yeah.
addictive. You know.
You know, yeah, it's crazy. You have to know that.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy too? Like I've worked with, because I work with kids with special needs, and I work a lot with autism. And I realized, and I was like, man, these kids like just so obsessed with certain things and routine. And then I started looking at other people in my life. I'm like, maybe we all have that little bit of that autistic traits in us, you know? Like you have to be obsessed. For me to be a world champion, I had to be obsessed with training. You can't just do it and be okay. Like, because these, you know, people living with autism, they're just so obsessed with that one thing. Like I have students who are so obsessed with like the train system. And then all of a sudden they can't think of anything else but the train system. You can try to, and they'll tell you anywhere how to get in Toronto. They'll tell you which bus, which way, the most intelligent people you've ever met. But if you ask them a simple question, they won't know it because they just don't care. Their mind is so focused on one thing. And autism is just beautiful and crazy at the same time. I think it's beautiful to see someone so obsessed and not caring about other things than what they're focused on. It doesn't work well in society, obviously, but they're so absorbed in it. And I think back and I was like, man, a lot of us have these personalities. To be able to be so obsessed and so routine. Like these guys, these individuals with autism have to do everything in a particular way, certain time, a little bit of OCD in there. I think to be successful in things, you kind of have to have that little bit of personality.
Yeah, and they can make incredible progress. And that's one of the things that a lot of those people are recruited by Silicon Valley companies, like specifically recruited because they know that they can achieve some incredible, great, feats of success.
I have a student at my school that probably knows UFC more than you. Like he's literally,
amazing.
It's crazy.
Wow.
He knows everything.
Wow.
Every fighter, every name, where they're from, what they do, you name it, he knows it.
Wow.
Any fighter, you can ask him from one.
I had a guy talk to me about this once, and he argued that it's an evolutionary trait, and what we're watching is the next level of human intelligence. We're seeing it in like little blips and leaps, and a non-reliance on emotion, and that also he believes that this is that human beings are interacting more with computers than ever before, and they're interacting less with people in a lot of circumstances, and he thinks that what you're seeing is like this eventual transition between humans now and humans of the future.
Yeah, things have changed.
Yeah, it's trippy.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Joe, this is a fucking awesome podcast.
Oh yeah.
We got to get out of here because I got to go take you freezing,
awesome.
And I gotta wrap this bitch up and go home. But thank you, brother. I'm
awesome,
glad we did it.
Appreciate it, man. I'm so happy to be here finally.
I'm happy we finally did it too. And Glory in Los Angeles this Friday. You can watch it on UFC Fight Pass. 2 world title fights.
Got it. We got Israel Adesanya, Jason Wilness, Matt Embry, Robin Van Roosmalen, and you'll be there.
I'll be there. And if you haven't seen kickboxing, this is your chance. Check it out. I guarantee you'll become a fan. Or I don't want to talk to you. All right. See you tomorrow. Bye.